Good evening, councillors, staff, members of the public. Please be upstanding for Her Worship Mayor Karen Vernon.
Good evening, everyone. It's now 6:30 p.m. and I'll declare this ordinary meeting of the Town of Victoria Park Council is open. I'd like to invite Councillor Minson to read the Acknowledgement of Country.
Thank you, Mayor. I am honoured to be standing on Whadjuk Noongar country on the banks of the Swan River. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. I thank them for their contribution made to the life of the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thanks, Councillor Minson. Please be seated. Welcome, everyone. Item 2 on the agenda relates to announcements from the presiding member, and I start with recording and live streaming of proceedings. In accordance with Regulation 14(I) of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, this meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed on the town's website. Under Clause 39, subsection 1 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, I do not give permission for any other person to record the proceedings of this meeting other than, of course, the town's administration. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and their voice may be live streamed to the public. Recordings of this meeting are also made available on the town's website following the meeting. 2.2 is public question time and public statement time. There are guidelines that need to be adhered to in our council meetings, and during question and statement time, people speaking are not to personalise any questions or statements about elected members, town staff, or use any possible defamatory remarks. In accordance with Clause 40 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law, a person addressing the Council shall extend due courtesy and respect to the Council and the processes under which it operates, and shall comply with any direction by the presiding member. A person present at or observing a meeting shall not create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings, whether by expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. When the presiding member speaks during public question time or public statement time, any person who is then speaking is to immediately stop, and every person present is to preserve strict silence so that the presiding member may be heard without interruption. As is our usual practice, there's a limit of 3 questions per person and a total time of 2 minutes for making a statement. This is to ensure that everyone receives a fair and equal opportunity to ask questions and make statements. If, however, there are very few people or no people who wish to ask more than 3 questions, we don't need to consider it further, but if there are very few questions or statements, we can allow those present to have a little more opportunity to ask their questions. 2.3 is no adverse reflection. In accordance with Clause 56 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law, both elected members and the public, when speaking, are not to reflect adversely on the character or actions of elected members or town employees. 2.5 is the Mayor's report, and so begin formally by saying that since this is his first official meeting in the role, on behalf of our council, I extend our formal congratulations to David Doy, who has been appointed as the town's new Chief Community Planner. David Doy joined the town in 2018 as the inaugural Manager of Place Planning, and last year he spent some time as the acting CEO of the town. His promotion to Chief is, in my view, a natural progression in his career, and we look forward to working with you. Now, the town also has a very busy events program over the next 2 weeks, and I just want to flag those for members of our community. The Harmony Week picnic is on this Friday evening, the 21st of March at Raymond Park in Lathlane, commencing at 4 o'clock onwards, with lots of free family entertainment. We will also be launching Arts Season for 2025 with an inaugural Arts and Culture Fest, which is going to be held on Saturday the 29th of March down at McCallum Park from 6:30 p.m. in the evening. There'll be free entertainment including live dance, theatre, musical experiences, art projections and light shows on the Boorloo Bridge, and we will of course be reflecting on the Indigenous history of the entire area at McCallum Park and the Swan River. So it'll be a great opportunity for our community to come out and come together. And also AFL footy season will kick off on Sunday the 30th of March with the town holding its first Derby Day at the Circus Park in Burswood from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m, where there'll be live music, pre-game activities, football merchandise, football fairies. The West Coast Eagles mascots will be there. It will be a great opportunity to get ready for the big match later on that afternoon. Now, in terms of the Mayor's formal report of my activities from February through to today. On the 19th of February, Deputy Mayor Ife and I joined the town's CEO and Executive Management at a Federal Grants Commission hearing to discuss the distribution of federal grant funding allocated to the town of Victoria Park and to understand better the issues around federal grant funding. Later that day, I went to the launch of the Mini Woolies program for schools, the first of its kind within the town, which is now located at the East Victoria Park Education Support Centre, where there is actually a Mini Woolies set up which is designed to teach children about numeracy and literacy. And the Victoria Park Education Support Centre is a great location for that program. I also on that day participated in 2 radio interviews and 3 television interviews in regards to Council's resolution on the 18th of February to oppose the proposed motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park. On the 20th of February, the CEO and I had a meeting with the CEO of Mindarie Regional Council to discuss all of Mindarie Regional Council's current issues surrounding waste management, including FOGO and waste to energy, and we followed that by a site tour of the Tamala Park landfill site and the Neerabup Resource Recovery Facility. On the 23rd of February, I attended the Burswood Peninsula Neighbourhood Watch Community Fiesta afternoon, which was sponsored by a town grant, and I'm pleased that Councillors Devereaux and Miles were able to attend as well and join in the community festivities. On the 25th of February, the CEO and I attended the Tourism Council of WA's state election breakfast at Optus Stadium, where the Minister for Tourism was the guest speaker. That was followed by an interview on 6PR, again about the Burswood Park proposed motorsport street circuit. Later that day, the CEO and I met with Hannah Beasley, MLA, the member for Victoria Park, to discuss and make a final presentation to her of the town's election advocacy priority projects. On the 26th of February, the CEO and I met with Mick Fells, the Liberal candidate for the federal seat of Swan, again to make a presentation and discuss our electoral advocacy priority projects for the coming federal election. On the 27th of February, I attended the Business News State Election Breakfast with guest speaker Liberal Party leader Libby Mettam, which was held at Crown Perth. Later that day, I had a meeting with Mayor Greg Milner of the City of South Perth to discuss a number of council issues, including Local Government Act reform. And that evening, I attended an ordinary meeting of the Mindarie Regional Council. On the 4th of March, I attended the Business News State Election Breakfast with the guest speaker Premier Roger Cook, again held at Crown. On 6th of March, I attended the West Coast Eagles AFL season launch breakfast. That was followed by a lunch with the mayors of Canning and South Perth, who are part of respective alliances with the town of Victoria Park. On the 7th of March, I attended a very lovely International Women's Day afternoon tea, which was jointly presented by the town of Victoria Park and the Victoria Park Community Centre. On behalf of Council, Mr CEO, can I pass on our compliments and thanks to the town's community development and events team who led that particular event, which was very well attended by the community. On the 10th of March, I attended a meeting of the Metropolitan Area's Mayors and Shire Presidents, which was hosted by the City of Swan, where election commitments and local government reform were the hot topics of conversation. And on the 15th of March, I held share with the Mayor at the library. So that concludes the Mayor's report. Item 3 on the agenda is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance. We have a number of members of the town staff led by the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Carl Askew. We have no one on approved leave of absence. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Mr CEO, are there any declarations of interest?
I've received none, Mayor Vernon.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, are there any elected members who've got a declaration that they need to make? Councillor Cruiser.
Thank you, yes. I would like to declare impartiality interest on item 12.1, 40 kilometres on local streets. I've discussed this with members of the community. Impartiality interest on item 13.3, feasibility report to resurface the Kensington Bushland Pathways. I've discussed this with members of the Friends of Jerderup and also with other members of the community. And item 17.1, Carlisle traffic management issues. I've discussed this with members of the community and I've put those through.
All right, thank you. I might go next and say, just for the purpose of the record, although it is my motion, with regards to 17.1, I'll declare an impartiality interest on the basis that I've received communications from members of the community about the subject matter of my motion. Thank you. Are there other elected members who have an interest they wish to declare? No? Right, thank you. In that case, we'll move to item 5, which is public question time. All right. Now, we have a pre-submitted couple of questions, which I am just going to go to first because they came in first in time. So these are questions from Linda and Steve Winter, and they have some short preambles saying, it is noted that Victoria Park Council are taking a lead in WA by being proactive with respect to electric vehicles. The council have installed 3 charging stations. Presently, these stations state that the charges are only for council vehicles. We have never seen a vehicle being charged at any of the stations in the past month, so they appear to be currently underutilised. Would the council allow ratepayers to use the charging stations with costs and introduction timeline to be determined? I'm going to refer that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I do believe we have recently been asked this question before, and our answer hasn't changed at this time, which is that we currently are not allowing ratepayers to use charging stations.
All right, thank you. We'll make sure that answer gets to Mr. and Mrs. Winter. Thank you. All right, so I have a number of people who have put their names down on the list. I'll go through those in order and then I'll ask if there's anyone else who still has questions that they would like to ask. First on the list, Vince Maxwell, please come forward. As per our usual practice, please state your name and suburb.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Vince Maxwell from Vic Park. At the ordinary council meeting in June 2021, the decision to pay out the contract with sewers was made at a cost to the town of $7.2 million. In answer to my question from last month, which I've just received in tonight's agenda, the town has advised that a decision was made by council in August 2021 to repurpose the future fund in order to pay this $7.2 million. So my question is, did the decision taken at the June 2021 OCM include the use of the future fund as a source of this $7.2 million payment?
I have to direct that question to the Chief Financial Officer, but I think based on the age of it, might need to be taken on notice, Mr. Old. I think that predates your joining the town.
You correct me, I would have to take that on notice.
We'll take that on notice. Thanks, Mr. Maxwell. What's your second question, please?
Thank you. So at the February council meeting last month, I asked about the town's capital works program, and your response, Mayor, as written in the minutes, is that you disagreed with my assessment that the town's capital works program is experiencing a shortfall or delays. Actually, I was wondering, are we able to put the a chart up from page 13 of the financial statement on the screen so everyone can see what I'm talking about? Or
we don't have the capacity to do that, Mr. Maxwell. It's a specific minutes software that runs.
All right. I've got this little one here I printed out. This graph is labelled as capital expenses, and this is out of tonight's report. The blue shaded area is labelled as 2024-2025 budget. And the red bars are labelled as actual expense, and the yellow is the yellow line is the previous year's actual. The gap between the red and blue has increased from $15 million last month to $30 million this month. I'm just wondering, can you tell me what does this chart represent? And by that I mean I know it's expenses, but is it cash out each month, or is it the value of purchase orders written each month, or is it something else?
So sorry, Mr Maxwell, you're looking at page 13 of attachment 14.2.1 to
That's
the
correct.
council.
Bottom right-hand
Bottom
chart.
right-hand corner. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've blown that one up. All right, that
Capital
appears on my
expenses.
screen as 4 together. Direct that question to the CFO, Mr Old.
It refers to invoices paid against a particular project.
Okay, so that's cash out. Okay, thank you. So, I didn't make this chart. It's the town's chart. So if the red actual and the blue budget is measuring the same thing, then what is it that you disagree with, Mayor, when I point out the huge gap between what you budgeted at the time you increased our rates at 8% and the red result that you've achieved now?
Well, Mr Maxwell, that wasn't the question that I answered back in February. You put a proposition to me that the Capital Works program was falling behind, or basically was well behind, but given the Capital Works program for 2024-2025 has some very large projects in it, projects that were never going to be commenced on the 1st of July 2024. Some of those projects will go on to be completed, and some of them may, for a variety of reasons, not start. But we are still within the current financial year. Therefore, I don't consider that we're at some point where we're clearly running behind. But I accept that you have a different view about that to me, Mr Maxwell, but I'm not going to argue about the contents of a graph prepared by the town staff with you in this meeting. So I've answered your question, and those are your 3 questions for tonight. So thank you. You're very welcome to reach out to me separately about that matter. Next on the list is Bill Campton. If you'd like to come forward, and please take a seat, and when you're ready, state your name and your suburb, please.
Bill Campton. I'm a 22-year resident of Star Street. My concerns are the current traffic calming scheme is not suitable for the area. I have spoken to various members of the engineering staff about the aggressive nature of the speed humps. With respect to the noise that trucks and trailers make when they go over it at full speed, they don't slow down at all. Most motorists do, but the tradies with their trailers don't. They've got their cement mixers and their toolboxes. They fly over there, bang, at that. Another aspect, I don't know whether the design department ever took it into account. As you realise, most modern cars are fitted with LED headlights, super bright. When you're coming the other way and another one of these modern cars is going up over there and they hit you, those headlights hit you, you are blinded. You are really blinded. I also want to know why they're posted at 30 kilometres an hour with the aggressive nature, whereas the more gentle ones in Lathlane are posted at 20 kilometres an hour.
That's a very good question. I'm going to direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, that is a good question. The town doesn't place the signs for the speeds on the road. That's actually from Main Road, so they're in charge of all the lines, line marking, and signage. So they deem what the speeds are that for the signs that they put up at each location.
So you have no say in it at all?
No.
Strange.
It's not the best, but we're local government and we do get dictated to by other levels of government. Do you have another question?
Yes, the concept of the bike lanes going down both sides of Archer Street. Was a survey ever done comparing the number of bicycles travelling along this road compared to the number of cars? I can almost guarantee you that I could stand on the roundabout, and for every one bicycle that goes up and down in the bicycle path, there might be 500, even 1,000 cars. So who are we catering for here? This is Perth. It's not Brussels. It's not Amsterdam. We are a motorised society, and it seems to me that the council is catering for a very small minority at the expense of the majority.
All right, I will get an answer to your question, but I'm going to direct that to our Chief Community Planner because his portfolio worked on the Archer Mint Streetscape Improvement Plan. So direct that question to Mr. Doy.
In designing the Archer Street and Mint Street Streetscape Improvement Plan, we are certainly trying to increase the amount of cyclists. So before the works were undertaken, absolutely a very low amount of cyclists using Archer Street. The intent is that once the works are completed, we will see more cyclists use it, hopefully riding to the station or riding to the New Carlisle station or riding to the principal shared path that runs along the railway. We'll need to continue to monitor to see whether those cyclist numbers improve, but that is the intent. Would you be able to repeat your second question, if that's okay, Mayor Vernon?
Yes, but I'm probably going to go back and ask, do you feel like you got an answer to your question from Mr. Doy just then?
I may have spoken to this gentleman before, because what he's just told me sounds very familiar.
Yes.
I don't wear it myself. I don't see that there's going to be sufficient cyclists using that street to warrant, I suspect, a 20 or 25% narrowing of the street. It is just not warranted. You're catering for a very small minority, and it's not going to increase.
All right, so I think it might have been Mr. Doy you wanted to know about that last part, who are we catering for? So I think you have a bit of background for that now.
Yeah, you've triggered my memory for the second part of your question. So the town has an integrated transport strategy which was approved in 2021. In that integrated transport strategy, it provides some really clear guidance around the town's position on mode shift towards other modes. So cars are really critical and obviously historic, but a very critical way of moving around the town and to broader areas. But we want to try and change the proportion of the people that are using cars and try and increase the amount of people who are riding, increase the amount of people who are walking. And to do that, we know we need to change the infrastructure to make it more palatable. So we expect that we will see more cyclists as we change that infrastructure.
Okay. So do you have a final question? Because it's 3 questions per person at the moment, and there are still other people on the list.
I honestly feel your assumptions are wrong. As I said in the beginning, this is a motorised city. It is not Amsterdam, it is not Paris, it is not Brussels. Irrespective of what you want to do in this council, other areas might take no notice of it whatsoever.
Well, look, what I would say is that obviously this is public question time rather than debate time, but as Mr. Doy has pointed out, we've got an integrated transport strategy. Integrated is a key word. It's about integrating all the transport options we have throughout the town. And we are subject to the WA Government's long-term bicycle network plan for the entire metropolitan area of Western Australia, which is about seeing a continuous and integrated bicycle movement network that will allow people to use, for example, bicycles to travel from one area to the next across local government boundaries. So there is some science behind this, but I did want to ask our Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams, about your comments about the potentially unacceptable narrowing of Archer Street by putting in the bike lanes. Ms Adams, are you able to say something about the width of Archer Street and its ability to accommodate the protected bicycle lanes that have been installed?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. In terms of the actual width, those do meet the requirements for all the traffic that is designated to travel on those roads, including incorporation of the bike lane. So that's purely from a dimension point of view.
So just another little piece of information. Archer Street was only ever one lane of traffic in either direction, and it's a reasonably wide enough street that the engineers were able to determine it could both carry vehicles and also have space for the protected bicycle lanes. So that is part of the engineering works that are done in the feasibility at the outset before such a program is rolled out. So that's some more information for you. I'm very happy to talk to you about that further, but I do have to try and ask the other people who would like to ask their questions for their opportunity for 3 questions. If we run out or if nobody else wants to ask their questions, I can let you have another opportunity. All right, thank you. Next on the list, Sam Zammit. Please come forward.
Good evening, everybody. I've noticed that the recordings of council meetings have been missing from the town's website for over 3 weeks. Are you aware of that, Lady Mayor?
No, Mr. Zammit, I wasn't, since I don't control the town's website, but would you like me to find out an answer to that?
I called to report this issue and was assured that it would be addressed very quickly. However, the problem still remains unresolved. Why has this taken over 3 weeks to make these recordings available? And when can residents expect them to be posted online, please?
I'm going to direct that question to the Manager of Governance and Strategy, Ms Tucker.
Thank you for the question. And Mr Zammit notified the town a few weeks ago that he couldn't locate the previous minutes. It is actually a problem with our provider. We've changed providers, and so the previous provider has made some changes which has affected the display of those minutes, and we've been contacting that provider and arranging for those to be restored on our website. But obviously it hasn't happened as yet, but we are still onto it. We are still looking to do that.
So when can we expect it?
Ms Tucker.
I don't know when. We're still dealing with this provider.
So we have a technical problem, clearly, Mr Zammit. We're trying to work through it.
Thank you. I recently called the town, requested to speak with governance, and I was told they were unavailable, and then asked to speak with Sarah, the CEO's personal assistant, only to be told that she wasn't answering. Finally, I informed that the town's phone system did not allow, the town's phone system did not allow calls to be transferred to the CEO directly. Why is the CEO so inaccessible that calls are filtered through junior staff, and what is being done to ensure residents can reach the CEO when needed?
I'm going to direct that question to the CEO, Mr Askew.
Thank you, Mr Zammit, for the question. I'm not aware of the specifics you're referring to, but I'm certainly happy to look into them and find out. And yes, normally that's where those calls would go. Sarah's not a junior officer, but they would certainly go there first and then come to me.
If I may, Lady Mayor, just to explain to the new CEO my relationship with the old.
No, Mr Zammit.
No?
That's a matter that you're very welcome to discuss with the CEO when you get to speak to him or meet with him, but we do have other people waiting to ask questions. So your final question, please.
Yeah, my final question is, I've noticed that we still have election campaign signs promoting the Greens up on your gate, Lady Mayor, despite the town's rules clearly stating that the election signs must be removed within 48 hours after the election. Why are you being allowed to ignore these rules, and why do these rules not seem to apply to elected officials?
There's way too many questions in there, Mr. Zammit, but thank you for notifying me of what you consider to be my non-compliance. I appreciate you letting me know. We don't discuss personal matters about elected members at council meetings beyond that, but thank you for letting me know.
You weren't aware.
I said thank you for letting me know, Mr. Zammit. That's your questions. Next on the list, Luana Lissandro. And thanks for coming by my property to check it out, Mr. Zammit.
I didn't actually. Had one of your spies out there.
Please return to your seat. Thank you.
Luana Lissandro, Lathlane. My first question is, as per attachment on the town's website for Archer Street, stage 2A between Mars and Gemini Way plans, on the intersection of Star and Archer Street, where the raised plateaus are, it shows that it is a pedestrian crossing. So my question is, will the pedestrian crossing be implemented and when?
Direct that question to Ms Adams.
Thank you. So through the chair on, I'm assuming this is about the Star and Archer roundabout.
Yes, but yes, with the works that were completed, and it's said it issue tender document.
So there's two current raised plateaus that are also doubling as pedestrian access on Star Street at either side of the approaches and exits on Star Street at the Archer Street intersection. And on the other two, the town has, as in the ones that are actually on Archer Street that currently have those rubber speed cushions, there are plans from the administration which will be put forward in next year's budget for those to also be similarly designed and constructed as pedestrian plateaus.
That doesn't really answer my question. It's in relation to the previous completed works, and that particular map indicates that it gives priority to pedestrians, that raised plateau that already exists on Star Street, and the plans clearly indicate, if you zoom in on those plans, that it's pedestrian crossing. There's vertical lines there.
So,
and it's on the town's Archer Street improvement webpage as part of the attached documents.
All right, we'll just go and have a look at that now if we can for a moment. This is the raised plateau that is on Star Street where the church is and the
Post office.
nursing home on the other side.
There's two. There's one on
I know there's one
either
on
side.
each, but
Yep.
you're saying it exists on both of them?
Yes.
Right, okay. If we aren't able to bring that up in time from looking at the town's website, we might have to take that on notice. But noting that we've got both Chief Community Planner and Chief Operations Officer having a look, I might go to Mr Doy around the Archer Street Improvements Plan.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks, Lissandro. So I suspect you might be looking at the Streetscape Improvement Plan, which is on the website, which is the concept design. So it would be good to know if you're looking at the concept design or a detailed design that was issued for construction. The concept design certainly shows raised plateaus on Star Street with line marking that looks like pedestrian crossings. But during the detailed design process, that line marking would have been, and the design itself would have been tested through a detailed design process and gone through an approval process with Main Roads, which has resulted in what you see out there at the moment.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Kind of need to be very succinct. In that case, given that Main Roads control the speed, as we've been told in previous questions, in response to previous questions, and signage of streets, and you're now indicated that Main Roads also looked over the design plan, and did Main Roads state that the town had to, one, put speed bumps in, as well as remove the potential of a pedestrian crossing on those raised plateaus, the existing raised plateaus. Did they advise against putting a pedestrian crossing there?
I have to refer that one to Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, it was the town's decision to put the speed control measures in over there. Sorry, was that the second part of your question?
Was also the pedestrian crossing. Did Main Roads advise against the pedestrian crossings, the existing pedestrians, or where the raised plateaus are?
Okay, so I've taken that first part, and Madam Mayor, could I ask that the Chief Community Planner take that second part?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Some good teamwork going on. What I would say is that Main Roads have warrants for pedestrian crossings and requirements around lighting that must be provided for it to be a specific pedestrian crossing. What's shown or what's indicated on the concept design, which looks like a pedestrian crossing, wouldn't have been allowed by Main Roads as a formal pedestrian crossing. So instead, it's now a raised plateau with some line marking that you can see out there today, and it is raised, but it's not a formal pedestrian crossing.
Given the response to my previous questions and the indication in the officer's report on the notice of motion stating that there was a number of measures, in particular 3 measures, a raised plateau at Western Street and Archer, a flat top plateau at Archer Street upon the roundabout at Star, and a possible horizontal type, deflection type treatments to slow traffic on Star Street, given that these are all unbudgeted items, is there an indication of having any type of pedestrian crossings at the roundabout at Star and Archer Street?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. Through the chair, those locations and treatments that you referred to were part of the ones that I referenced. We, as the town's administration, are putting up for consideration by council in the FY25-26 budget. And as for the designated pedestrian crossing locations, that is something that we will be looking at as part of that design process too.
Thank you. Congratulations, David.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who has any questions that haven't been asked that they would like to ask? No? All right. Well, on that basis, we'll now close public question time at 7:07 p.m. Item 6 on the agenda is public statement time, which I'm now going to open at 7:07 p.m. We have a pre-submitted statement, which I'm going to read out from Anya Bartels of Carlisle. I've raised my concerns previously that there's no safe crossing of Roberts Road, in particular near the kindy of Lathlane Primary. This does not only apply to school hours but also on weekends. I personally have had several close calls with my children and witnessed several others, mostly of parents with children. Besides, the islands within the road are too small to cross with bikes, and cars frequently drive at 60 kilometres an hour. Please consider funding of a pedestrian traffic light, preferably between Coolbardie Park and the Eagles Training Oval. This will allow safe crossing not only during school hours but also on the weekends. The people who have indicated they wish to make a statement, I'm going to go through those people first. First on the list, Vince Maxwell, please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed in the mid-year budget review that several capital works projects have already been deferred to future years, despite repeated assurances from senior staff and even yourself, Mayor, that the capital works program is not running behind. Clearly, these projects were not ready to proceed at the beginning of the year, and in hindsight should never have been included in the 2024-2025 Capital Works program. A more realistic approach to the Capital Works program would ensure that ratepayers are not being charged for projects that were never going to happen. Despite these delays, we have already paid for these works through our rates, and instead of circulating in the local economy, that money remains locked away in the town's bank account. The significant increase in bank interest revenue highlighted in the report indicates that the town is holding far more cash than expected. As we can see, these projects were not adequately planned and should not have been included in this year's budget. Additionally, in tonight's report, several questionable new items have been added into the Capital Works program. One example is the $30,000 replacement of floodlights at the Tom Wright tennis courts. These lights can only be a few years old, and if they've already failed, that raises serious concerns. Another example is the sudden need to replace two vehicles, one being a Colorado for $35,000 and the other a road sweeper for $160,000, due to ageing and high mileage. If these vehicles were in such poor condition, why weren't they included in the original 24-25 budget? The town employs 2 staff members to manage its fleet and also pays for fleet management software. How then has this need only just been identified halfway through this year? Perhaps these positions, or the software, are also due for replacement. I urge the council to ensure better planning and transparency in future budgets to prevent ratepayers from being charged for projects that won't be delivered. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Maxwell. Next on the list, Bill Campton. You don't want to come forward to make a statement? That's your opportunity to say things that you would like to let us know about.
It's already been referred to as being included in future programs, but can I get an assurance from someone, perhaps the designer, that some other form of calming is actively being considered? Because these aggressive strips, these aggressive bumps that you put in at the moment are just not working for the number of reasons I stated. Have you considered the snake type consideration, you know, where you slow down like that? And again, I refer to why are these ones so aggressive? I know I've been told that they are Australian standard. Well, if they are, why are the ones in Goddard Street in Laff Lane not Australian standard? I would be a lot happier if the ones on Star Street were the more gentle ones. It wouldn't keep me awake in the morning and night when the tradies and the trucks go past and at full speed. So is there any other form of traffic calming being considered?
Right, thank you. I'll take that as your statement, but I will direct your attention to the officer's response to my notice of motion in tonight's agenda, which does talk about the alternative traffic calming treatment that the town is considering for the Archer Street area.
That's coming, is it?
That item is on the agenda for tonight, but inside the agenda there is actually all the officers' response about what particular types of traffic calming measures they are looking at implementing in the future. So I do encourage you to have a read of that because it sets out the types of treatments and where they're likely to be located. And I think that might answer some of your questions. Thank you. Next on the list for a statement, Sam Zammit.
Thank you. I called your after hours phone number roughly about 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks ago, about dust being produced on a building site close to my property. My wife had just done the washing, she had to bring it all in. So now, and when I rang up, I was told that I would hear from a ranger shortly. but it was to no avail. And now, still 2 weeks later, I still haven't heard from our rangers. Why are we paying for this sort of service if we're not receiving it?
Refer that question over to... Oh, sorry, of course. It is statement time, Mr Zammit. So we'll have to take it as a... Yeah, you will have to take it as a statement, not as a question. Sorry. You're causing me regression, Mr Zammit. I'm going backwards in the agenda instead of going forward. No, it's not on. I'll take that as a statement from you that you're not satisfied with the after-hours number and that there was no response to you from the rangers. So I think the executive management who look after that section have heard your complaint in that regard. I'm not sure where you're at with the timing of your statement. I think you've probably been speaking for under a minute and you've got a total of 2 minutes. So is there anything else that you wanted to make in your statement?
Yeah.
Because I can't answer your questions at the moment. We're in statement time, not question time.
So when will I get an answer? I have to wait till the next meeting, do I?
You're asking me questions again, Mr Zammit, during statement time. So it's been noted down that you've got an issue. That statement's been heard.
I've just made a statement about an inefficiency service that we're paying for. So what's your answer on that?
I'm telling you, Mr Zammit, this is not public question time. This is public statement time. So you've made a statement. You want an answer. We have heard you. All right?
This is your technical way out of it.
No, it's not. Mr Zammit, don't be arguing with me. It's
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just made a statement.
Following the meeting procedures, local law. You've made your statement. If that's the entirety of your statement, then thank you.
So make it. What do you make out of this? I bought in some globes. It's got mercury in them. And I bought a container of batteries. I went to put them in, whatever you call them, those bins, holes in the wood. They're full, chock-a-block. Do we take this recycling seriously? Or? I've left my batteries in a paper cup, a drink cup on top of because I couldn't fit them in.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Mr Zammit. I appreciate you letting us know. Thank you.
And at the last meeting, the CEO said that the security would be reviewed. It's still here tonight, wasting our money. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Zammit. Next on the list, Luana Alessandro.
Luana Alessandro, Lathlane. I'd like to speak to item 12, combination of item 12.1 and 17.1, which I feel that kind of intertwined. You've got a summary from the Perth Inner City Group in relation to lowering speed limits in residential streets to 40 kilometres an hour with indications on basically harm minimisation strategies for particularly vulnerable road users. When you make your decision for item 17.1, I really do hope that you've studied that report and had a look at the fatality statistics on page 2 when you increase by 10 kilometres per hour. You've got a nursing home on the corner of Archer and Star Street. You've also got a childcare centre. You've got increasing pedestrian access on Archer. And yes, I understand that the community are upset with speed bumps and there are provisions to look at other calming devices. It's not just about cars, it's about vulnerable users. We want to have a vibrant town centre. That's why the town made the decision to update the Carlisle Town Centre. Yes, I understand there's a lot of roadworks going on and road closures that are affecting the community. But paramount should be that harm minimisation approach stated in the Inner City report. There should be pedestrian crossings, and it needs to also be looked at in a whole context, that is also including Lathlane and Roberts Road. Roberts Road is out of your remit because it's part of the WAPC, who control it, and Main Roads. And the future of Roberts Road will also be determined by what happens with Orrorong Road. So I hope that this item, 17.1.1, can also go to the Integrated Transport Strategy Group for them to have a look at, and maybe there needs to be an amendment. I support the officer in his last statement of the report saying that those speed humps should not be removed until other measures have been put in place. You need to look at vulnerable users. Archer Street is continuing to be vibrant. Businesses are opening on Archer Street despite there being road closures.
Ms. Lissandro, you're already at 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Can you try to wrap it up for me,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
When Metronet and all the completed works are done, then you will be able to measure what happens, but you need to look at it from an integrated aspect, that is Orrong Road, Roberts Road, Carlisle and Lathlane. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a statement who hasn't already done so? No. In that case, we'll conclude public statement time at 7:20 p.m. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is confirmation of minutes and receipt of notes from any agenda briefing forum. The recommendation is that Council confirms the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 18th of February 2025. 2, receives the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 19 February 2025. 3, receives the notes of the agenda briefing forum held on the 4th of March 2025. And 4, receives the notes from the Urban Forest Strategy Implementation Working Group held on 12 February 2025. Can I seek, please, a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? That is moved by Deputy Mayor Ife and seconded by Councillor Anderson. Is there any dissent to this item? No dissent. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 8, presentation of minutes from external bodies. The recommendation is that Council receives the minutes of Catalina Regional Council meeting held on the 5th of December 2025. 2, receives the minutes of Mindarie Regional Council meeting held on 12 December 2025. And 3, receives the minutes of Catalina Regional Special Council meeting held on 19 December 2025. Seeking a mover and a seconder for that item, please.
Where is Catalina?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to take questions from the public gallery during the agenda. That only happens during public question time and public statement time. All right, thank you. Moved Deputy Mayor Ife, seconded Councillor Cruiser. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9 is presentations. 9.1 is petitions, and we have received a petition which I formally now submit to Council. This is a petition with 17 signatures, 3 of which have been verified and 14 unverified due to it coming in today. The petition is, I'm just going to get the petition up. The petition is from the lead petitioner Anjali Jinaran, requesting that the bus stop at 57A Archer Street, Carlisle, not be placed at the proposed location. The petitioners urge the Council and the PTA to reconsider the decision and explore other alternatives that will serve better the needs of the community while minimising impact on local businesses and residents. So that is the petition. So I'm now going to formally move, I'll move this recommendation that Council 1 receive the petition from Anjali Jean Arrain in the terms I just read out. Secondly, request the CEO to refer the petition to the Public Transport Authority for consideration. And 3, request the CEO to advise Anjali Jean Arrain in writing of Council's decision. Can I seek a seconder, please, for the recommendation? That's seconded, Councillor Minson. Thank you. I don't wish to be heard on the item. Councillor Minson, did you wish to be heard? No. Is there any dissent to the recommendation? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.2 is presentations. We have none. 9.3 is deputations. We have none. Item 10 is method of dealing with agenda business. So I'm going to read out those items that it is being proposed will be adopted by exception resolution, leaving the remainder to be dealt with separately by debate in the ordinary course by council. So for elected members, if you hear of an item in the list that you want to have pulled out, please let me know at the end of reading it out. And equally, if you'd requested an item to come out of the list and you now can see that it can go back in the accepted resolution list, please let me know that too. So the recommendation is that the following items be adopted by exception resolution and the remaining items be dealt with separately. 11.1, Council Resolution Status Report, February 2025. 13.1, TVP 24/31, Estate Parks and Streetscape Maintenance Tender. 13.2, proposed seasonal agreements for Perth Cricket Club and Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club. 13.3, feasibility report to resurface the Kensington Bushland Pathways, request for extension. 14.1, schedule of accounts January 2025. 14.2, financial statements January 2025. 15.1, corporate business plan Q2 progress report October to December 2024. 15.2, audit actions Q2 update report October to December 2024. 15.3, quarterly risk management report. And 15.4, compliance audit return 2024. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation? Moved Councillor Minson, seconded Councillor Devereux. Going to ask, is there anyone who needs any changes to be made to the list? No. On that basis, I'll formally ask, is there any dissent? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. So now proceed with only the remaining items that haven't already been dealt with by exception resolution. So item 11 on the agenda is the Chief Executive Officer report. 11.1, Council Resolution Status Report for February 2025 has been dealt with by way of exception resolution. That takes us to item 12, which is the Chief Community Planner reports. Item 12.1 is 40 kilometres per hour on local streets, request to proceed to community engagement phase. The recommendation for this matter is that Council 1 requests the CEO to undertake a community information campaign in partnership with the Perth Inner City Group for the 40 kilometre per hour Safer Speeds project as it applies to the town of Victoria Park. And 2, request the CEO to provide a further report to Council by June 2025, summarising the results of the community information campaign and recommendations on next steps for progressing the 40 kilometres per hour Safer Speeds project. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for this item? Okay. So that is moved by Deputy Mayor Ife and seconded by Councillor Minson. Now, I understand we actually did have a request for some questions for this, but I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Ife first and say, do you wish to be heard on this item?
Not at this stage, but if the debate happens, I may speak at the end. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Minson, were you seeking to be heard at this stage? I am going to formally be asking, is there any dissent to this item? I'm not going to move it. I'm not going to call it as yet. I just want to know if it's moving to debate. I understand, Councillor Devereux, you've got some questions, but I've not been led to believe that there's necessarily an opposition to this matter. So I just want to know how to manage that. All right. So, Councillor Devereux, do you have questions that you want to proceed with now? Do you want to do that? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I do have some questions that I sent through earlier but haven't received a response to yet, so I'm glad to be able to ask them. The first question was, can you advise what infrastructure changes would potentially be implemented in Victoria Park to encourage 40 kilometres speeds on local streets if the trial is adopted?
Refer that to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question, Councillor Devereux. The types of changes to local streets that might be implemented, which would be via the Skinny Street sub-program, are broadly documented on pages 76 and 80 of the Integrated Transport Strategy. There's quite a long list in a table there around local road design guidance. Interventions will be prioritised on local streets being renewed where speeds remain consistently higher than the proposed 40 kilometre speed limit, where there are concerns about pedestrian, cyclist and vehicle safety, or on key walking and cycling routes connecting to destinations.
Thank you. Second question was, has there been opposition to 40 kilometre local street speeds in the City of Vincent where it has been trialled? And if so, how has it been tackled and what lessons does that provide to Vic Park?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yes. So during the 40 kilometre trial at the City of Vincent, the volume of opposition was unexpectedly very low. So the lessons were clear communications about the change and the changes anticipated and then actual measured impact were really key.
Thank you. Third question, what is the approximate volume of local streets in Victoria Park that are currently experiencing excessive speed, and what is the anticipated impacts on the safety of vulnerable citizens like children and the elderly?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So the town has a list of approximately 45 local streets where the recorded 85th percentile, so they are those cars that are going at a much higher speed, around or higher than 55 kilometres an hour, so quite speedy. The impact of these speeds on safety for vulnerable citizens include higher chances of serious injury or fatality in the instances of crash, reduced rates of accessibility, and then the flow-on public health impacts and local economic impacts of that.
Thank you. What is the expected impact on safety for residents if a 40 kilometres local speed limit is implemented in Vic Park, given the inner city group paper claims in attachment 12.1.1 a 20% reduction in speed limit results in a 200% increase in the likelihood of surviving a collision?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So changing the speed limit to 40 kilometres an hour will, where the speed limit is adhered to, result in the published increased chances of survival, as per the attachment. Reducing the speed limit, though, to 40 kilometres may, for some streets, result in reductions of speed from over 50 kilometres towards the 40 kilometres. So not necessarily adhering to the 40, but getting some of those higher speeds down from 55-60 to 50-45. And again, that significantly increases the chance of survival.
Thank you. Last question. The Perth Inner City Group 40 kilometres on local streets summary appears to demonstrate on page 15 a significant difference between initial community disagreement about the speed reduction in the first 12 months and the community sentiment 3 years after implementation. If that is correct, what lessons does that provide us with for implementation of the Integrated Transport Strategy in Vic Park, and specifically the interventions in Archer Street to make it safer?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yes, that is correct. So three major lessons. Lesson one is that change can be hard, and the perception of the outcome of that change can sometimes be worse than the reality. Often, and so these are direct lessons from the City of Vincent team. Often time is needed following completion to get used to that change and the experience. And the City of Vincent were at pains to say that leadership and courage are often needed to make that change. Lesson 2, again from the City of Vincent team, pre and post evaluation data is critical to understanding the impact the intervention has made. And lesson 3, clear communication of the proposed benefits, and that would be pre-implementation, and then the actual impact post-implementation is important to help understand the impact of the change, discover lessons and refinements for future projects, so things that didn't work well where we need to get better, and demonstrate to the community the impact of the change. They are the lessons.
Many thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. So I am going to formally ask if there is any dissent so I can determine if we are moving to a... Okay, Councillor Homer, you've got a question?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just to follow up on Councillor Devereux's questions about the fatalities for cars and pedestrians. Do we know how many pedestrians we lose to cars each year in town, or is it not in the when the percentage obviously goes down with the speed? But was there a
An unfortunate turn of expression there, Councillor Homer, about how many people we lose. Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I don't know the figure off the top of my head, and I'd want to get that right, so I would take that on. I would take that on notice. Thank you.
We'll need to take that on notice, Councillor Hamer. So I'll ask again, is there any dissent to this item? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, next item is 12.2, Draft Oat Street Station Precinct Plan and Scheme Amendment. Request to proceed to public advertising. So there's a very lengthy recommendation for this one, which I'm not looking to read out, but I have had notification, Councillor Minson, you may be considering moving a procedural motion on this item ahead of it being moved. So is that something you want to proceed with now?
Yes, I can. Yep.
All
Thank you,
right,
Matt.
thank you.
So I understand that the governance team has prepared some draft wording for the procedural motion, but as I have it here, it reads that the item relating to the Oat Street Station Precinct Structure Plan be referred back to the CEO for a workshop, which can be held by September 2025.
All right, thank you. So that's the motion that you wish to move. Can I just ask you to set out succinctly as you can, please, your reason for that, and then I'll call for a seconder.
Yep, thank you. So the reasoning is to allow adequate time for the outstanding items within the next steps section of the Oat Street Precinct Preferred Growth Scenario report to be addressed, and to investigate the feasibility of infrastructure contributions per State Planning Policy 3.6 related to the planned development under the Oat Street Station Precinct Structure Plan, and to develop a strategy on financing social, public open space, green, transport and community asset delivery, considering the town's planning and development horizon with a particular focus on infrastructure contributions.
All right, thank you for setting that reason out. I'm sure the Minutes Secretary will get to update that in due course. So I'm calling for a seconder for the procedural motion. Online, Councillor Hamer is indicating, oh, you've already done it online, good. All right, so it's seconded. Now, procedural motions don't have any debate, so on this basis we'll just be proceeding completely to the vote. For or against the procedural motion, and we will ignore what is currently appearing on the screen, which has got a vote against it from nobody. So our phantom councillor for the time being. But I don't know if we're able to fix that up so the screen display works properly. Is it? Oh, it's Councillor Cruiser. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure what's happened to your picture. Okay, well, so we will officially restart the program somehow, but maybe I'll make it simpler and I'll start by asking my usual, is there any dissent to the procedural motion Okay, so there's enough indication of dissent that we'll have to just go straight to the vote. So I'm assuming that we're able to proceed now to the vote.
Just a point of order.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Minson.
Yeah, thank you. It's my understanding that I do get 5 minutes to explain my my procedural motion.
Okay, all right. It's pointed out that clause 84 does give you an opportunity to speak for not more than 5 minutes. And the speaker is not to speak other than to, and the seconder is not to speak other than to formally second it. So there won't be any speaking by the seconder. And there isn't to be any debate. So we will start the clock when you're ready, Councillor Minson.
Thank you, Matt. So I just want to, start by outlining what I see as the big opportunity here for the town of Victoria Park. But to start off, just to set the context about the challenge that we face as a town, that we have a planning and development target to double the number of residents and therefore the number of dwellings within the town over the next 2.5 decades. So this additional infrastructure to be delivered by the town that we have planned needs to be aligned with this growth. So this is obviously a massive task that the town is grappling with and will grapple with in the years ahead. So some of the examples of the infrastructure we need to deliver are, park upgrades, streetscape upgrades, a bigger library. It comes up quite a bit, active transport projects that we all talk about. And it's a very long list. And like I said, it's a big challenge. But the opportunity is that now that we are conducting all the planning, like we've got the Oak Street precinct structure plan, which I'll get to in a second. We also have the Albany Highway. We have the Belmont Peninsula. We're doing all this planning for this growth now. And there is a state planning policy, number 3.6, which is infrastructure contributions, which sets out the framework to receive upfront financial contributions to deliver this required infrastructure. And this is typically done through development contribution plans. And this is a straight quote from the state planning policy. A development contribution plan is likely to be most effective and recover the highest proportion of costs for providing infrastructure when applied to areas experiencing significant growth or transformational change, which is exactly what the town is going through over the next few years. So that's our situation. And putting it simply, it requires developers to pay a small amount of money to the town for each dwelling to accommodate the additional and upgraded infrastructure required to fairly service the new residents. So that's just in simple terms. But the opportunity is massive. So we've got to deliver about 20,000 new dwellings to hit that doubling target. There is a cap on the levy that you can get per dwelling through the state planning policy, and it's a modest $5,000 per dwelling. So it's not an impediment to development. It's much less than what our 1% art contribution amount. But timesing that $5,000 through the 20,000 proposed dwellings that we need over the town is $100 million towards infrastructure that the town needs to deliver, and that is the state's position as how a town should be funding infrastructure. So I guess that's kind of the background. I'll get to this item now about why I think it should be delayed. So acknowledging that the preceding document to this precinct structure plan, the preferred growth scenario report, we went through a lot of discussions, and it was actually included within the next steps section to do this work, to do the investigation, to look into the infrastructure contributions, to do the analysis on population growth and where the asset demands and service demands are. So it actually was already there for it to be done by now and to be put into the draft precinct structure plan. So it's work that we actually haven't done yet, which we recommended we should do before proceeding to this next stage. So I think it should happen now. So my proposal is to refer this to an elected member workshop, taking into account the town's advice for at least 6 months to do this work properly, which will mitigate the risks around trying to deliver it fast and pushing back other critical planning bits of work on their advice. So the reason I think it's important to do this now is firstly that it's the precinct structure plan that this information should be going in. That's the right place for it. Secondly, that it isn't time critical to do this precinct structure plan, so there isn't really big risks in doing this delay to September. And thirdly, doing it before the public consultation period actually allows it to be in the documents that are getting shared so that community can comment on. And the community does include the developer community, who are obviously going to have comments on this. So it allows them the opportunity to comment on it if we do it before we go out to public comment. So just to conclude, now is the appropriate time to pursue this opportunity, and it's a big one. So I hope you will all support me in this request for a workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Minson. So it's now time to vote. Councillor Cruiser. It's a difficult thing for you to raise at this stage, Councillor Cruiser, because Councillor Minson has spoken, so he now doesn't get to address any of the things that you might raise. There isn't any debate. I accept that debate and questions are different, but again, there was elected member correspondence, I think, shared this afternoon with all elected members. So normally speaking, look, you'll just have to give me a moment to have a look through the rules, because normally I've not seen questions asked at this stage for a procedural motion. It's up to you. I'm happy to look at it, but if you don't wish to pursue the questions, that really is a matter for you. So long as I'm really clear that your question is a question that doesn't relate to the things that Councillor Minson has addressed, because that would be manifestly unfair to him for him to have said things, and your question really is about what he's had to say. So if it's not about that, then in the circumstances, I'll just take some advice from Ms Tucker. All right, so Councillor Cruiser, I'm going to allow it, but I am going to encourage elected members to not see this as somehow opening up a whole pile of questions that, as I say, we've already heard specifically from Councillor Minson about why he puts this forward. So I don't want us to end up in a de facto debate when the rules indicate no debate per se. So what is your question, Councillor Cruiser?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. We have information from staff that deferring this might lead to the tree retention policy being put on hold. Is that related to resourcing constraints?
I'm going to direct that question to Mr Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. The answer to that question is yes.
All right, so on that basis, we'll need to go to the vote now. So you're voting now in relation to either for or against the procedural motion to refer this back to the CEO for a workshop. So declare the procedural motion is lost. Those who are in favour of the motion are Councillor Minson, Councillor Hamer and myself. Those against, Councillor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Ife, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Miles and Councillor Devereux and Councillor Cruiser. So we now go to the officer's recommendation, which appears on pages 17 to 18 of the Council's agenda. That recommendation is to receive the draft Oates Street Station Precinct Structure Plan and associated Local Planning Scheme Number 2 Amendment 1 and to endorse it for advertising in accordance with Schedule 2 Part 4 Structure Plans of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015 and otherwise pursuant to the recommendation as it appears. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for that? Still seeking a seconder. Moved Councillor Cruiser, seconded Councillor Melrosa. I'm going to ask Councillor Cruiser, did you wish to be heard on this item? All right, thank you. Councillor Melrosa, did you wish to be heard? No. Formally going to ask, is there any dissent to the item? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is item 12.3, which is proposed naming changes in the Edward Millen precinct. The recommendation is that Council endorses the renaming of Edward Millen Home to Elizabeth Bailey House, and secondly endorses the naming of the new playground designed to be constructed as part of the Edward Millen redevelopment project as Mildred Creek Playground. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation? I've recorded. All right, so that's moved Deputy Mayor Ife, seconded Councillor Cruiser. Deputy Mayor Ife, did you wish to be heard at this time, noting that I've had indication that there are some questions and there's also a proposed amendment to the item?
I will very briefly speak at this time, if I may, Mevan.
Sure.
I think it is well overdue that we recognise that Elizabeth Bailey made substantial contribution to this building, in fact built it, and to the area around it, and that in reality Edward Millen, while he might have been a hard-working person, never actually set foot in Victoria Park, and there is not a community desire to continue to have that home named after him. I am really actually quite excited that we can take this step and rename this beautiful building that is an important part of our town after the person who first built it. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Councillor Cruiser as a seconder, did you wish to be heard? All right, thank you. Now, I've got an amendment to move, but Councillor Hamer, you had some questions. Did you still want to pursue those questions, or you're not looking to? All right, in that case, I'm going to move an amendment which has been circulated to elected members today. My proposed amendment is that point 1 of the officer's recommendation be amended to read, 1 endorses the renaming of Edward Millen Home to Elizabeth Bailey House and Edward Millen Park to Elizabeth Bailey Park, and authorises the CEO to submit an application to the relevant authorities for renaming of the park. I'll briefly outline my reasons. During the 2021 community consultation, 82% of the survey respondents supported changing the name to Elizabeth Bailey House and Elizabeth Bailey Park. It is time to reflect that sentiment, especially given the proposed completion of the works to both the house and the park by the end of 2025. It is appropriate to finalise the recognition of Elizabeth's contribution to this precinct via the renaming of both the house and the park at the same time now, to provide an opportunity to celebrate that recognition. Once the cultural mapping is done for the town at a later date, according to the officer's report, dual naming can be achieved with a singular focus on recognising the important Indigenous history of the precinct and focusing celebrations on that. I'm seeking a seconder for my proposed amendment. Seconded Councillor Hamer, so thank you. The amendment is now up for consideration. I'll speak briefly to elaborate on this. Councillor Cruiser. Yes. Councillor Miles, you had your hand up for some reason as well.
I just had a question.
Sorry to just want to. So you still want point 2 to read as is. You're just amending point 1. Is that okay,
That's
thanks.
right. That's why it says amendment to point 1. What is the procedural motion that you're trying to move, Councillor Cruiser?
I would like to move a procedural motion that this item be deferred until the April OCM. And my reason is that this amendment came through in the last couple of hours. This is a really important space within the town. I know it's very important to many people. And I would like us to have more than 2 hours to consider the different options for naming it, because I want us to get it right.
All right, so it's a procedural motion to defer the item to April OCM. Is there a seconder for that? Is there a seconder? There's no seconder, so the procedural motion fails for want of a seconder. So go back to the amendment. So I'll now speak briefly to the amendment. I've thought about this for a considerable amount of time. It's been a very long time since we started the process to open up the possibility of renaming Edward Millen House and the park. Clearly, it became a very active issue once we had sought expressions of interest for I guess, an organisation in the private sector who would undertake the substantive heritage restoration of the building and activate the site. So much so that chosen tenderer Black Oak Capital Ventures chose to set up a company called Black Oak Capital Ventures Elizabeth Bailey Proprietary Limited, because they were very supportive of this house and its history as having been built by a female, to have a reflection in the name. It was great that the town went and did a survey in amongst the community about their appetite for this change. That did come about after a meeting with the then Honourable David Templeman, who was the Minister for both Lands and Heritage, and he had expressed an interest after seeing it that the house and the parkland would somehow reflect its history as a maternity hospital, and also the history of Elizabeth Bailey, who built the house for maternity hospital purposes. Obviously, the officer's report expresses that there's been a lot of things that have happened since 2021, since the survey was done. There certainly hasn't been a survey since then that's indicated that the general sentiment has changed. We do have the added layer of important feedback from our Mindera Advisory Group that they have identified the park as a site they consider would be appropriate for exploring dual naming in future. And the officer's report, importantly, has updated elected members that there's now a cultural mapping work that has begun, but is in its early stages and currently is focusing on McCallum Park, I believe, because of the Mindera Spring being located in that particular part of the town. The report indicates that that's a significant body of work that will take a period of time to be conducted and will need some resources. Hopefully out of that we'll get some appropriate cultural locations within the town, and hopefully ultimately out of that some names that will be suitable for us to consider for dual naming in the right locations. And if time proves to be right, that will be true for this particular part of Victoria Park, where currently Edward Millen House and Park is located. I guess the singular import of my amendment is to say, based on the answers that we received from the Chief Community Planner at the Agenda Briefing Forum, that we can in fact progress the naming of the park, which has to go through the Geographic Names Committee and follow a very strict process, which is completely different to naming the house, which is just a matter of we choose the name for the house. But we have to make an application to the Geographic Names Committee, and once that is completed, the park can be renamed Elizabeth Bailey Park through that process, And in due course, when the cultural mapping is completed and we have the recommended name for a dual name for this particular park, then we can celebrate that in its own right, which to me would be a really important way to focus on what is the purpose behind dual naming as I understand it. At the moment, if we proceed with the renaming of the park now alongside the renaming of the house, we'll be able to have a distinct celebration about Elizabeth Bailey's contribution. And then, as I say, in due course, we'll be able to have that proper celebration about the dual naming and the Indigenous history for the precinct. So I see it as not more complicated than that. I accept that other people might have different views, and I'm very keen to hear what people have to say. So that's my reason for doing it in essence, but I would still say that if we don't go ahead and rename the park at this time, it is highly likely that the works to restore the house and the park will be finished on schedule by the end of this year. There is no indication that we'd be in a position to do cultural mapping or dual naming by the end of this year with this particular site. And then we run the risk that we'll have Elizabeth Bailey House sitting at Edward Millen Park next to Mildred Creek Playground, which does sound like a bit of a mouthful for our community. So those are my reasons. Councillor Hamer, did you wish to be heard as a seconder? No? All right. So are there any questions? No? Then I'm formally going to ask, as I always do, to determine if we need debate. Is there any dissent to the proposed amendment? No? There being no dissent to the amendment, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. So we now go back to the recommendation as amended. Obviously, Councillor Ife, you did speak to the item. Councillor Cruiser, you'd reserved your right to speak at the time. I'm going to formally ask, is there any dissent to the recommendation as amended? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. And I do want to thank all elected members for this particular item. There have been many iterations of council that have considered this over the years. We today stand on the shoulders of all those who came before us working on the future of this particular location and its precinct, and I think this is another milestone moment in it. So looking forward to everything that comes next. Item 12.4 is a late item to council, so it didn't go through agenda briefing forum. It is the Sponsorship Approval Arts Program. The recommendation is that council approves the following sponsorship support from Hawaiian Park Centre. 1 Arts Season April 2025, $5,000 monetary support and in-kind support, access to and use of venue space in the Hawaiian Park Centre, and 2 Youth Art Awards June 2025, $2,500 monetary support and in-kind support, bracket access to and use of venue space in the Hawaiian Park Centre, staff assistance and marketing support. Is there a mover and seconder, please, for this item? That is moved Councillor Minson, seconded Councillor Anderson. Are there any questions given it's a late item? No. Councillor Minson as the mover, did you wish to be heard? Councillor Anderson as the seconder, I don't wish to be heard. All right, no. So I'll formally ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. We move now to item 13, which are the Chief Operations Officer reports, noting that item 13.1, the tender for estate parks and streetscape maintenance, has been dealt with by exception resolution. Item 13.2, the proposed seasonal agreements for the Perth Cricket Club and the Hockey Club, they've been dealt with by exception resolution, as has 13.3, the feasibility report to resurface the Kensington bushland pathways. Item 14 is the Chief Financial Officer reports, and I note that 14.1 schedule of accounts for January 2025 has been dealt with by exception resolution, as has 14.2 financial statements January 2025. We come now to 14.3, which is the mid-year budget review for 2024-2025. This is an absolute majority item. The recommendation is that Council 1 approves the budget variations as contained within attachment 14.3.1. 2, approves the budget requests as contained within attachment 14.3.2, and 3, adopts the amendments to the 2024-2025 annual budget detailed in attachment 14.3.3. Can I seek a mover and seconder for the recommendation, please? We have a mover. We're still waiting for a seconder. So, seconded Councillor Minson. Moved Councillor Minson, seconded Councillor Hamer. Councillor Minson, did you want to be heard on the mid-year budget review? No. Councillor Hamer, did you wish to be heard on the item? All right. Formally going to ask, is there any dissent? What's proposed? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 15 is the committee reports, of which there are 4 committee reports. Each one of those, 15.1 Corporate Business Plan Quarter 2 Progress Report, 15.2 Audit Actions Quarter 2 Update Report, 15.3 Quarterly Risk Management Report, and 15.4 Compliance Audit Return for FY 2024. Not FY 2024, 2024, have all been dealt with by exception resolution. Come to item 16 on the agenda, which is applications for leave of absence. Do we have any applications from elected members for leave of absence? No? All right, there's none. We'll move on to item 17. 17 is motion of which previous notice has been given. So this is a notice of motion from myself. So I am going to proceed to read out the motion and then we'll proceed from there. The motion is that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to 1. Provide a report to the Ordinary Council meeting in March 2025, including A. the current status on the Town's report in responding to Resolution 282 of 2022 and Resolution 81 of 2023 to conduct a review of traffic management in Carlisle, and B, whether the Town is proposing to install any further traffic interventions or calming treatments within Carlisle in the next 18 months, including the locations, types, indicative costs and timing of implementation of such further interventions and calming treatments. 2, remove the speed humps installed on Archer Street, Carlisle between Planet Street and Orrong Road. And 3, list for consideration in the draft 2025-26 budget the cost of installing a dedicated pedestrian crossing on Archer Street, Carlisle between Bishopsgate Street and Star Street. Now, that is the content of my motion. The reason for my motion, before I call for the seconder, is there's a considerable level of concern within the Carlisle community about the safety of local roads and how traffic volumes and speeds are being managed across a cross-section of intersecting roads. Given the increased traffic volumes on Roberts Road, Archer Street and Oak Street over the last 5 years, and increases in traffic diversion of traffic during railway crossing removals and railway line upgrades, it's timely to complete a review of the traffic management and effectiveness of traffic calming measures currently in use in this section of Carlisle and potentially plan for future changes to traffic management. And the speed humps will need to be removed to address community concern. Now, Councillor Melrose, you indicated to me prior to the meeting that you wish to second the notice of motion. Is that right?
That's correct, Mayor Vernon.
Thank you. So I appreciate you seconding the notice of motion. Thank you. So I'm going to speak very briefly on this item. Firstly, the first point of my motion was requesting a report to this actual meeting about really where we're at with prior resolutions of this council to basically conduct a wholesale review of traffic management in Carlisle that began its life in December 2022 and then further was brought back in reports to council in 2023 that at the time then put the matter off to a later date. And also seeking a report to this meeting about whether the town has proposals over the next 18 months for further traffic interventions or calming treatments. To a degree, the officer's response to my notice of motion has, in my view, been sufficiently thorough to have answered both of those questions in effect. It has actually said what the current status is on progressing the response to those early resolutions, and it has also indicated a number of proposed further traffic interventions or calming treatments that are currently not budgeted for but are planned to be raised as part of the 25-26 budget review process. So to a degree, we have quite significant amount of information about what is now being planned to be brought to council during the next budget process that we're already begun and underway. In terms of point 2 of my motion about the removal of the speed humps, for the sake of clarity, the motion was purposefully framed in this way for 2 reasons. Firstly, until such times as I could receive information, and indeed all elected members receive information about what the town's position was on the removal of the speed humps, it wasn't appropriate to put in a date for their removal. And secondly, the way it is currently framed, it would be understood by those in local government that such a resolution, were it to be passed in the form of item 2, would mean that it would be up to the CEO as to when the CEO determined it was appropriate to operationalise this resolution. Now, without knowing the town's position on whether in fact they were supportive of removing the particular speed humps identified, let alone what conditions or circumstances they would be prepared to remove such speed humps, it wasn't really possible to determine at the time of filing the motion what date should be put on that. So that's to make it clear that at the moment the wording, were it to be passed, will leave it in the hands of the CEO to determine based on the town's position about when the speed humps should be removed and in what circumstances. The officer's report currently indicates that there is support by the officers for removing these 3 sets of speed humps and to replace them during a further project to come in the future, which will be about refining better traffic calming treatments for that particular part of Archer Street. And the final part of my motion is simply about responding to some people who reached out to me from the community to discuss the need for a pedestrian crossing on Archer Street, Carlisle, between Bishopsgate and Star Street, because those respective families that reached out to me are experiencing some difficulties taking their children from one side of Archer Street to the other side en route to the Lathlane Primary School, which is a difficulty they say they're experiencing Monday to Friday. So listening to their argument about that, I considered that this is the appropriate way to list it for consideration. Elected members then in the budget process will have an opportunity to hear from the staff about the suitability of that, the likely cost of it, where it should be located, and we'll have an opportunity to have input into it. So that last part of the motion doesn't bind us today to anything other than it will be a part of our budget deliberations in due course. So that's what I want to say about my motion at this stage. I'm obviously looking forward to hearing what plenty of other people have to say about it. I am going to turn to Councillor Melrosa as the seconder, but Deputy Mayor Ife, are you indicating that you have a question that needs to be answered before Councillor Melrosa speaks?
I was hoping to ask if we could suspend Clause 50, speaking twice of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 for the duration of this item, please.
If that is a motion that you wish to move, I think we've got the wording for that in the system. We'll just check. All right, so we've got the appropriate wording. We can get that up in due course. It possibly doesn't need to be up right now. So Deputy Mayor Ife has moved a procedural motion. Is there a seconder for that procedural motion? Councillor Melrose is indicating he'll second it. If that can be recorded. I'm taking it, Deputy Mayor Ife, that you don't need to speak for up to 5 minutes on that procedural motion to explain why. No? Good. All right. Is there any dissent to that motion? No, there being no dissent, declare that passed unanimously. So the rule against speaking twice in clause 50 will be suspended for the duration of this item. All right, Councillor Melrosa. And for the avoidance of doubt, for those who may not necessarily recall what that means in a council meeting, it does not really mean it's a free-for-all. We will still be following rules and we will still be going to people in due course, but it does mean that if you do speak to the item and then there is something you want to add later, you have that opportunity to do so. So, Councillor Melrosa, as the seconder, did you wish to speak at this stage?
Can I just speak briefly before I discuss an amendment?
Well, it's a matter for you as to whether or not you want to speak on this matter now. I know that you have sent through an amendment, but I'm informed by governance we've got more than one amendment, more than many questions, and so although I took the liberty of speaking as the mover, I did so kind of advisedly, but I'm thinking that people might benefit from hearing all of the questions before anyone is really thrust into the position of needing to speak, because they might want to use their speaking time to address some of the things that they hear. But it's up to you. I'm going to give you the option. If you want to speak briefly about it now, you can. Noting that I've been told that there's multiple amendments to be made to my motion.
Yeah, look,
Or sought to be made
I'll
to
just
my
cover
motion.
these points.
Okay.
Because I think they help frame this particular issue. But thank you for moving that procedural motion, Councillor Ife. I think it's important because we all have something to say. And thank you, the Mayor, for bringing this to us today, because I think this issue's gone on for quite a long time and it hasn't really been properly addressed. And I think this was bound to come to us. So I have a couple of issues. For these speed bumps. They have three core issues for me. It's a network impact, a reputational impact and a strategic impact on the town. The network impact was fairly broad. A lot of drivers chose different streets to avoid it, and that has shifted problems elsewhere and caused accidents in other places that weren't necessarily recording them to begin with. The positions of the speed bumps damaged the bike lanes where the curbs are in numerous places. The original placement of the speed bumps actually encouraged cars to drive in the middle of the road to avoid them. And then the sign placement, which is still not rectified, is displaying a speed which you cannot physically go over them. There's a reputational impact for the town. So originally, these weren't even proposed, so there were slow points, and the change wasn't communicated to the community or the councillors when it was advertised. The speed bumps created a breeding ground for discontent in the community and resulted in prolific negative commentary from a large number of people, which will be difficult to overcome. Resulted in the town staff involved in the project being accused of incompetence on social media several times. It also resulted in the project featuring on a post on the Belltower Times where it was mocked, and it also resulted in a street being listed as number 2 on RAC's Risky Roads in the Metro WA list. However dubious that list is, it ended up giving us a pretty bad reputation. And then there's also the strategic impact. It's put future bike lanes projects that we run at risk. It puts future streetscape projects at risk. It potentially puts the 40km/h safer speed project at risk. And it also frames mode shift to active transport in a negative light.
Thank you, Councillor Melrosa. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through questions. So anybody who wants to ask questions, want to try and get those all out the way before we actually get to requiring anyone else to talk through debate or we deal with the question of the amendments. So going to go first to Councillor Anderson. I understand you had a question. Is that one you wanted to pursue?
No, thank you, Mayor. Wait, it's fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Devereux, you had some questions?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just a couple. The first question was, can you please provide Can the staff please provide any information about the speeds on Archer Street prior to the recent treatments and subsequent to the recent treatments?
Going to refer that to Ms Adams.
Thank you. So prior to the treatments that installing the rubber speed cushions, there were speeds in excess of 50 kilometres an hour, around, I think from memory, the 57 to 58 kilometre an hour mark. And after they were installed, it dropped to less than 50 kilometres per hour.
Thank you. Second question was what you regard as the implications for community safety if the existing bolt-on speed humps are removed, and what alternative measures could be immediately employed to maintain safety for the community, particularly the elderly and children, if the bolt-on speed humps were removed?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. Through the chair, so if the bolt-on speed humps are removed, and our report has detailed a position on it that we do support the bolt-on ones being removed, it's more a matter of timing, and that there's a replacement with other traffic calming measures immediately. So having a time lag from a community safety point of view and user point of view, we would not support between removal and installation of the other traffic calming measures.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. Councillor Hamer, got you listed down for questions. You still wish to proceed with those?
Yes, just a couple. Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Along a similar track as Councillor Devereux, the speeds that were recorded of 58 kilometres per hour, I take that to be in 2022, 2023. Is that correct?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, they were in previous years. I'm not sure of the exact year.
Just the timing of that. So the traffic speeds were 58, and then the bike lanes were installed, which in effect turned Archer Street into a skinny street treatment, and then the speed bumps were installed after. So do we know what the speeds were after the skinny street installations before the speed bumps, or do we only know the speeds after both those treatments?
Might need to break that down if we can, because I think we're all keen and interested in it. Are we able to get clarity on the date when the speeds were detected at 58 kilometres per hour, and then the date when the Archer Street Streetscape Improvement Plan Town Centre Stage 1 works were done, and then whether there were any speed treatments after that work were done but before the next works were done, which were the protected bike lanes, and then after that, so we get a timeline. Because I think otherwise putting questions and saying, is it this or that, is probably going to end up mixing it all up.
Or do we know what the speeds were without speed bumps but with the bike lanes is probably an easier way to...
So with bike lanes plus the skinny street treatment?
Yep.
Right.
Do we know that or not?
Ms Adams, any way you want to frame it so that you get the right time milestones?
Look, I'll give you the information I know, which was that stage 1 was completed in 2022. Now, we also have data from, I think it was 2017 and 22, although I'm not sure of the exact dates, which actually showed those speeds, nearly 60 kilometres an hour. Whether they were done exactly before or after the installation of those stage 1 treatments, I'm not sure. But it was, definitely within the period of when those works were being undertaken or after, would be my guess. So we do have, that's probably without going back through the exact months of when they were undertaken. That's all I could offer for that. And then definitely say that after the installation, the speeds were recorded as being reduced.
I just asked after the installation of what?
Sorry, after the installation of the speed humps, and also obviously with all the treatments in stage 1, including the bike lane.
Okay, so we don't have an answer of speeds without speed bumps. We only have an answer historically and after. We don't have anything with the traffic calming Skinny Street bike lanes just by themselves.
Ms Adams?
I can't definitively say that that was when it was undertaken, as in we had the 22 data collected after the installation of the bike lanes.
But those road upgrades would have a calming effect on the speeds in a planning sense. Or they would have intent to do that, but you just don't have that information of how effective they were.
Ms Adams?
In terms of the intent of the Skinny Streets projects, that might be something more related to the Chief Community Planner, who might be able to speak actually on the intent of reducing the width of the roads.
Mr Doyle?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, absolutely. When we bring the size of the street down and we include landscaping and so on either sides, we will see a speed reduction. Now, in terms of where the speeds will be, or where the speeds were at different phases in the project, which was your question, I don't know the answer to that question either, other than to know that we've collected them, but I don't know what they specifically are, other than that they've come down. So in 2017, 2018, the speeds were really high, like so almost 60 kilometres, like the Chief Operating Officer just said, and then they've come down progressively to what they are now, which is much lower, the speed humps, but skinnier street definitely slows speeds.
So we're getting somewhere. So the current speeds now are below 50, and we are predicting the speeds to increase if the speed bumps were removed, but we don't know how much they would increase because we do have the other treatments there which weren't there historically. Okay. The other part of my question was some of the replies to elected member questions did mention that the speeds would be recorded, or traffic management, data would be recorded ongoing. So how often or when will be the next time that is recorded on Archer Street?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, we are planning on including an allowance in next year's budget for, and I think we've put an estimate of up to $50,000, which will include the data collection. As to the frequency of that is something that we would still need to review depending upon what traffic mitigation treatments we are able to use and construct within the 25-26 financial year.
Thanks. Just on that answer, there was another answer about the cost to do the traffic management for the Carlisle area. That was mentioned at a $30,000 to $50,000 price point. So why would the town-wide traffic management be at the same price as just doing one street of data? Is that not correct?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, we wouldn't normally undertake just sole data collection on that particular street because we do need to take into account the wider precinct. So that figure I gave you was for that study for that precinct.
Okay, thanks. That answered that.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Councillor Cruiser, you've got some questions.
Prior to Friday, the 14th of March, were any questions asked of staff about the cost, safety impacts, or other feasibility issues related to the removal of the speed humps on Archer Street?
Can direct that to Ms Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. So the information I have is that no questions, phone calls or other non-email communication has been provided on costings prior to the 14th of March 2025 when it went to all elected members on this matter.
Thank you. And to clarify, was it also the case that there were no questions asked through any format, including email, phone calls, or meetings, about the safety impacts or other feasibility issues related to removing the speed humps prior to Friday the 14th of March?
Sorry, Councillor Crozer, when you say no questions or they're asked by whom?
Asked by elected members.
All right. Ms Adams?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any, but that's just to the best of my knowledge.
The usual practice is that any elected member who makes a request of information from staff, that reply comes to all staff. We didn't receive, to all elected members. We didn't receive responses to any elected member requests for information related to this. So I just wanted to check that that was correct, that there were no questions asked about the removal of speed humps in any format prior to 14th of March.
That was the question that you sent
Yep.
through today, and governance sent you an answer saying no, there weren't.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you have other questions?
So the other questions, how much was spent installing speed humps on Archer Street, Carlisle, between Planet Street and Orrong Road?
Ms Doy? Ms Adams?
It's a really hybrid team. Sorry. Sorry, through the
We're
chair.
working on it.
Through the chair, we have that cost at $18,000, and that was funded in part by Department of Transport's grant, through the WABN grant at 50%, and through town funds.
Could we get any opinion from staff about whether removing infrastructure that was installed through co-funding from the Department of Transport might decrease the Department of Transport's willingness to fund future road safety programs in Victoria Park?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, unfortunately, I can't. I don't have an opinion on that, because that's really up to the department, and they assess each case on its merit on a case-by-case basis.
My understanding is that recently a pedestrian was hit and killed on Star Street. Was this on a section of road marked as 50 kilometres per hour? And are there any traffic calming treatments on this section of road?
Ms Adams?
So through the chair, we are aware there was a pedestrian accident that did occur on Star Street, the exact location of which I'm not personally aware. What we have been told is that the incident is under review and investigation by both Main Roads and the police, and the town actually can't comment any further on that.
Does that mean that the town can also not comment on the exact location where it happened?
Ms Adams?
I'm not aware of the exact location to provide that information.
With the motion as framed, would there be a gap between the removal of the current bolt-on speed humps and the installation of other traffic calming other traffic calming infrastructure?
So, well, obviously, Councillor Crozer, it is set out in the officer's response to the motion that in their view there would not be, because they would not remove them until they were ready to put in something different. Is that right, Ms Adams? That's the way it reads?
That's correct. That's our response, that we would not support there being any gap between that, between the removal and the installation of other traffic calming measures.
And the motion as framed would work with that they would only be removed once other traffic calming measures are ready to be installed and funded. Is that correct?
Is that your understanding, Ms Adams?
Through the chair, that's a little tricky. in terms of commenting on the wording because my interpretation personally may not be the same as what the Mayor has explained the interpretation of that wording to be.
Maybe I'll direct that question then to the CEO, since he has the final say about those matters.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon, for the question. And Councillor Cruiser, my interpretation of the motion would be that those humps would be removed as part of a replacement program as part of the upgrade schedule, probably in 25-26.
Can I just check with you, Mayor Vernon, whether that fits with the intention of your motion?
I thought I had made that clear, Councillor Cruiser, so I will make it clear again. That's what I said when I spoke to the motion, that the current wording is on the basis that the determination about when the speed humps that would be removed would be a matter for the town CEO unless the wording changed to include a different date. But the officer's report says that they support the removal, but they don't plan to remove it until they do a new treatment for the area or install something different, and they've set out what they're proposing. So at the moment, that's the intention, why it was put forward in that way, to determine when the town would be in a position to do it. So I've not moved a specific date for the removal for that reason.
Thank you.
If that's all Councillor Cruiser's questions, I think Councillor Hamer, you had your hand up first, then I'll come to Deputy Mayor Ife.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just a clarifying point around one of Councillor Cruiser's questions. There was a number of questions raised about this in previous council meetings, October, November and December. I think one of them being Councillor Melrose's question about the advice on how council would move forward on removing them. So I think I do recall a number of times this has been mentioned and talked about at this level.
Is that a question, Councillor Hamer, or that sounds like a statement to me?
Is that true?
Councillor Melrose, did you ask such questions previously?
I do remember.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Ife, a proper question, please.
Oh, there's no pressure there then, is there? Okay, some of what I'm about to ask was almost addressed in Councillor Cruiser's question, but I just wanted to wrap it up neatly with a bow. Am I correct in understanding that the proposed traffic calming measures outlined in points 10, 11 and 12 of the report are entirely contingent on a budget decision at the time when we pass the budget later this year?
Ms Adams.
Through the chair, that's certainly a major part of it, but there is also, I'm just reviewing that, there's the one proposed, sorry, the treatment proposed at the intersection of Western and Archer, and there may be some community consultation with that. So it's not the only consideration, but certainly having the actual budget allowance approved in 25-26 will give the town the ability to implement these.
So they wouldn't proceed until we have approved those in the budget?
Doesn't that stand to reason?
Yes,
Deputy
it
Mayor
does.
Ife? You can't proceed with this
No.
level of works without a budget.
No, it was just there was an additional thing about community consultation, but none of it can proceed until the budget has passed. That's my understanding, and that's correct, yes.
Yes, Ms
Correct,
Adams.
but it wasn't the only, because, yeah.
So the next question is, if these are passed in the budget, and this allows you to elaborate further on this extra point if you wish to, what sort of a time period might we be looking at until we might be able to start the works on the additional items at point 10, 11 and 12?
Ms Adams?
At this stage, I would only be confident in saying within the 25-26 financial year, and that is more a factor of the contractor's availability more than anything else. The designs are not too challenging because we got two more that are further south along Archer Street that are very similar in terms of the raised plateaus. So it really would get down to our conversations and agreement with the contractor.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Mayor Vernon, if I may. The current wording of your motion, which, and I'm very grateful for the explanations you've given to clarify your intent. I'm concerned, though, that if people haven't attended this meeting or haven't watched it online, there may be community members who interpret it as meaning that if this passes tonight, they'll be the speed bumps will be pulled out next week or tomorrow. And I'm under the understanding that people might be moving motions to specify some particular dates. But I was wondering, Mayor Vernon, in line with what you were saying around your understanding of the officer's response and your intention with the motion, would you potentially be interested in an amendment to make it clear that the speed bumps that we're talking about would not be removed until additional safety measures have been put in place?
I'm just going to get some advice from the Manager of Governance, because I'm aware of a growing number of amendments being proposed to my motion, and they all have primacy in terms of timing. And so now you're asking me effectively if I'm looking to change the wording on my motion, which then might impact on other people and what they might be looking at doing. All right. After taking some advice from the Manager of Governance that I can change the wording of my motion, it will be subject to the seconder of my motion, Councillor Melrosa, as to whether what I'm proposing is permitted, and if not, then it won't get up. I need to tell you that. That is the advice I've received from the Manager of Governance, with also some assistance from the CEO and Ms Adams as to wording. So it would be, I would be content to change the wording of point 2 out of an abundance of caution and to make it clear to those who otherwise are concerned. Remove and replace the speed humps installed on Archer Street, Carlisle between Planet Street and Orrong Road as part of planned upgrades scheduled in the annual budget for 2025-2026. That's the wording. I think it goes back to the Minutes Secretary to write it up. And now I formally invite Councillor Melrosa. Do you accept those changes as the seconder?
Yes, Mayor Vernon.
All right. That has been, that's now formally incorporated into my notice of motion. However, it is now just after 9:15 and we normally have a break at the 2-hour mark to stretch legs, a comfort break. And since I just know there's just a lot that everybody is dying to say coming next, I'm going to propose that we adjourn right now so that we can have that break. Otherwise, before we know it, we'll be ensconced in a lot of discussion and we'll end up missing the opportunity to have that comfort stop. So I'm going to move. All right, I'm just going to call for the adjournment. Are people happy for that adjournment to be 10 minutes? To let everybody do what they need to do. So we'll adjourn now at 8:45 for a period of 10 minutes to 8:55 p.m. Getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Yes, adjourn to 8:55 p.m. Thank you. We'll see you shortly. All right, everyone. We are resumed on item 17.1, and we had finished before the break with a amendment of the wording accepted by the mover and the seconder for the main motion. I've already spoken substantively to the motion. Councillor Melrosa has spoken as well. However, I am aware that in the order in which I received notice of them, a proposed amendment from Councillor Melrosa, a proposed amendment from Councillor Hamer, and governance have informed me there's a foreshadowed or a sought advice from Councillor Cruiser on an amendment. I'm not sure what that one was, except the email that was forwarded over to me. Councillor Miles, don't tell me you've got an amendment too. No?
I just had a couple of questions because we were still doing questions, and Bronwyn just, Deputy Mayor, I've just had a question. I just had two little questions.
Yep. No, I realise that we've got more questions. Councillor Anderson's also flagged with me that she does have the question that she didn't have before. So I just wanted to bring everyone who might have tuned in back up to speed with where we are. So it will be better if we can finish all the questions before we get on to working out who's moving amendments. So on that basis, I'm going to go to Councillor Anderson because I did say I'll put you first for your question. So if we deal with that now, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Just considering that Archer Street is a main artery into the town from Orrong, you're right, into the town, has the town received any feedback or concerns from emergency services regarding difficulties using Archer Street regarding the speed bumps? And additionally, was the impact on emergency vehicles considered? Do we consider this when we design the streets in regards to installing traffic calming measures?
Ms Adams, two-parter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll probably answer the second question first, which is that, yes, we do consider emergency services, but I will clarify with this specific one that they were not specifically engaged. So engagement was, and the consultation, was with Main Roads and PTA primarily during the design phases. And then to the first part of your question, we haven't received any adverse feedback or negative feedback from the emergency services after the installation of those speed humps.
That was all. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Ife. Sorry, I understood Councillor Miles said that you had some questions. No?
No, I
No,
have questions.
you've
I was
got
saying I was
questions.
next after.
Okay, all right.
And that's where we got to.
Councillor Miles.
So I was just wondering whether there's a proper term for the speed bumps, because they've been called like rubber speed cushions and bolt-on, and I feel like maybe we could call them by the proper term so that everyone understands what we're referring to. Is there one?
I did send this email through, but I don't think there was time for an answer to come back to it, looking for a technical name for these things. Ms Adams?
Through the chair, I feel like I'm going to let you down. It's rubber speed cushions.
Okay, I was just wondering if it would be possible to actually change where we've written speed humps to actually use rubber speed cushions, because I don't want the community to feel like we're talking about every raised thing on any road. Would that be possible?
That's to be directed to me, Councillor Miles. I'm happy to change it to rubber speed cushions if Councillor Melrosa's happy for it to be called rubber speed cushions.
I will be, yes.
Rubber speed cushions. I'm sure the Minutes Secretary can annotate that up in due course. All right, other questions?
And
Councillor
then
Miles?
just with point 8 in the officer's report, where we're talking about the state black spot program, in point 9 it says that potentially the cost sharing is 2/3 state, 1/3 local government, but it doesn't say that for point 8. But I just wondered, is that going to be the same, like subject to obviously getting the approval by Main Roads, but would it be 2/3 funded by the state, 1/3 funded by us?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, the black spot projects normally do have that apportionment.
All right. Any other questions? Councillor Cruiser.
In the town's opinion, would it be possible to immediately remove some of the rubber speed cushions while retaining safety on Archer Street. Not all, but some.
So, Councillor Cruiser, before I give that to Ms Adams, noting that there are 3 rubber speed cushions in that section of Archer Street, is your question to invite Ms Adams to consider whether one or more of them could be removed without compromising safety? Ms Adams.
Through the chair, no.
All right, I'm going to do last call. Last call for questions. Councillor Hamer.
Can I just clarify the number of speed rubber cushions that we're referring to? I mean, obviously the ones on Archer Street, but the side roads on Western, and that's the only ones that we're referring to?
Well, Councillor Hamer, it's probably 2 questions there. One is your question about what's in my motion? Because my motion only refers to the ones that are on Archer Street between Planet and Orrong Road, of which, by my calculations, there are 3 sets of them that run across both lanes. Are you referring to the total number of rubber speed cushions in the entire area that are referred to in the officer's response? Because clearly they do refer to speed humps/cushions on other streets. But my motion at the moment is only about the ones on Archer Street in that one location.
Yeah, I'm asking the officers, the ones that are directly off Archer Street. So as you come around the roundabout, then you do hit speed bumps on and off the roundabouts as well. So I'm including those in the Archer Street zone. And how many are the town referring to in that number?
Right. Ms Adams?
Sorry, may I clarify what number Councillor Hamer's referring to?
So we've got 3 speed cushions on Archer Street directly, and then we've got either side of the roundabout where the post office is, and they're the only ones that we're referring to when we talk about Archer Street speed bumps. Or well, they were all installed at the same time, and they're the ones that we can't do without, from Councillor Cruiser's previous question.
So, through the chair, there are 3 locations on Archer Street, which are 6 cushions. And there's another 2 locations on Star Street, which is where we've referenced, I think it was point 14, where we're talking about using horizontal type deflection treatments. So all of those are what we've referred to when we're talking about a request within the 25-26 Capital Works Program budget. We would include those in those locations as well.
Okay, thanks.
Are you clear, Councillor Hamer, you have the information that you feel you need, noting that on either side of the roundabout on Archer and the intersection with Star, there are the raised plateaus on the Star Street side of the roundabout, and then the rubber speed cushions are on the Archer Street leg of that roundabout. Does that make sense?
Sorry. So they're different on Star Street than what they are on Archer Street?
Well, no, the raised plateaus are different, but my understanding is there's a set of rubber speed cushions installed further down on Star Street away from the raised plateaus, because the raised plateaus are right at the entrance to the roundabout. Is that right, Ms Adams?
That's correct, Mayor. There are, we call them like kind of the flat top asphalt speed humps. They're not the rubber ones. So those are on the approach, and that's one of the things we're looking at replacing the ones on Archer Street at the roundabout with. But the ones that are further along Star Street, those are the ones that we'd be looking to replace as well, but with not replace with speed humps. Replace that with another treatment, which is the horizontal deflection slow points.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So, taking it, there are no other questions. So now, I have received 2 emails that came to me since the meeting started with formal attachments to them, which were shared with everyone. The first in time was at 7:14 p.m. from Councillor Melrosa. There was a subsequent one sent through in its entirety by Councillor Hamer at 7:28 p.m. And my understanding is that there was a, I think, request or wording for an amendment put forward. Councillor Cruiser, you sent something through to governance around 6:43 p.m. this evening that has now been brought to my attention. Is that something you're seeking to ventilate as well? Because I have to work out the order because I can only deal with one amendment at a time.
Yes, that is something I am seeking to put forward.
Microphone.
I am seeking to put forward with that, and I am content to be last in line.
All right, okay. All right, so on that basis, Councillor Melrosa, do you have a wish to move the proposed amendment that you've circulated to everyone this evening?
Yes.
All right, if you'd like to tell us what your alternate motion is, and I note that governance have got a copy of it, so hopefully they'll be able to pop it up on the screen. I'm going to put you first.
Is it appropriate just to read the changes rather than the entirety?
I really haven't had almost any opportunity to have a read of what you've put together.
I mean,
so
yeah.
if it's clear that you're adding things in.
2, 3 and 4 I'll read out.
Right, well,
Yeah.
it looks like we've got it up on the screen. Is that right? Oh, yes, bigger is good.
Do you want me to read it out then?
Just give me one moment.
Sure.
All right, just clarification from the Manager of Governance and Strategy that as the seconder of my motion, you agreed to include amendments to that that took point 2 through to the planned upgrade scheduled for the annual budget of 25-26, and now you're seeking to move an amendment that changes that. So if you'd like to read what the proposed changes are, we'll take it from there and then I'll seek a seconder.
Do I have to include your changes in mine? Because I'm not going to be able to read off of it.
No, not my
Okay.
changes. Just let us know what you're doing, that you're adding something to point 2, you're adding a new 3 and a new 4.
So point 2 I am modifying to include at the end after Orong Road and Star Street between Roberts Road and Lyne Street by 30 April 2025. 3, I'm including an additional inclusion of a new point that replaces another one to halt any further installations of this type of speed device on designated local distributor and district distributors within the town, and the inclusion of a new point 4 to halt the intersection modifications proposed, which are listed in point 8 and 9 of the officer's comments to the Mayor's notice of motion until the traffic management review of Carlisle is complete and it can be determined whether other modifications are more suitable. And then obviously 5 is the
It's renumbered.
substantive
Yep.
one.
I see that. So yes, so the part that you're adding into number 2, it is still going to read currently, well, now we do have to deal with that issue because the amendment that has been approved is the words remove and replace the rubber speed cushions all the way through to Orong Road, and now you're seeking to remove the words as part of planned upgrades scheduled in the annual budget 25-26 and replace that with the words and Star Street between Roberts Road and Lyne Street by 30 April 2025. So long as you understand that at the moment you've not proposed to amend the words and replace, and you've not proposed to amend the words rubber speed cushions, and I don't think the rubber speed cushions bothers you, but maybe the words and replace does bother you.
And replace does, and I wouldn't
So
want to include that.
you'd be moving to delete that word.
Yes.
Right. So can the minutes secretary add in, please, that the proposed amendment is to delete the words quote and replace. Actually, the better way to do it is to just can we just bold the whole of 2 for Councillor Melrose's amendment, and then just change the word speed bumps to rubber speed cushions, and I think he'll be happy with that if that's bolded. So it's the whole rewording of that clause for your amendment only. All right, so Councillor Melrosa, I'll invite you to state your reasons, noting that you'll get a chance to substantively speak to your amendment, so you may want to keep your reasons nice and neat.
Oh, yeah, sure. The reason for including new point 3 is to ensure, to include modifications to point 2 is to ensure the Star Street speed rubber cushions, which are also problematic, are included in this motion, because I wasn't sure if they were. The inclusion of a new point 3 is to ensure this unpopular speed device is not applied to any other roads in the town with high traffic numbers, ensuring this issue hopefully does not present again. And the inclusion of a new point 4 is to ensure significant modifications to the network are not undertaken before a review of traffic management in Carlisle is undertaken, and to ensure a level of consistency is properly considered for the network at these key local distributor intersections.
All right, I'm going to make an announcement. I'm going to call for a seconder, but I'm flagging for you now that I'm prepared to put councillors' amendments individually, so separately. So in other words, you have the chance to vote on them one by one, given that they're each discrete, and there may be some of them that speak to some of you and don't to others. So, is there a seconder for Councillor Melrose's proposed amendment? No seconder? Should be now. All right, so that's been moved by Councillor Melrosa, seconded by myself, Mayor Vernon. It's time for a real debate, people. All right, so Councillor Melrosa, you have the floor.
So, in terms of...
Sorry, Councillor Cruiser, is this a point of order or...?
No. I just wanted to check if it's more appropriate for us to ask questions about the motion now before Councillor Melrosa speaks and may wish to reply.
Well, he does have a right of reply, but I think he needs an opportunity to fully expand on his reasons, given that his reasons were very short, and we might hear things that may answer our preemptive questions. Councillor Melrosa.
Thanks. So point 2 really is about addressing the immediate issue, and while I appreciate that, you know, some people have an idea of when we should do this and how quickly it should be done and whether we should leave the road without any sort of device, I kind of disagree. I think there's been enough time to consider an option. We've seen what can be done post this removal, and I think local government is notorious for making very slow decisions, and I think if we're looking at long-term or a change that takes forever, it's going to be yet another thing that the community are upset about. I don't particularly see the removal of these creating an immediate safety issue. I think there are plenty of roads in the city that have this sort of arrangement, and the speeds of all the surrounding roads really don't remarkably point to anything unusual going on. I think there's a similar situation on Roberts Road. There are similar 85% speed statistics. So I just don't see there being anything particularly unique about this and any reason why we should keep them for any longer than what we need to. In terms of halting this type of speed device. I just think it's super inappropriate on a local distributor or a distributor to have this kind of device. It just doesn't make sense. There are too many vehicles using this road to have such an aggressive way of slowing them down. So I do not want to see this device used anywhere else in the town on similar roads like Oak Street, Roberts Road, Archer Street, and any other local distributor and district distributors. I think we've seen that there are many other alternatives that we can use that are actually quite successful and probably better looking and less aggressive. And in terms of the point 4, and it might not be abundantly clear unless you've completely read the agenda, but there's a bunch of points that are made as a result of the motion that the Mayor put up. And I found it interesting because there are other proposals for traffic management in Carlisle, despite the fact we haven't done a traffic management review. And 2 pointed out to me are on Lion Street, Bishopgate Street, and Roberts Road and Star Street. And it's about the level of consistency where we apply these traffic management devices. And I've noted that it appears that there isn't going to be any consistency for our local distributor streets, which are Star Street and Bishopgate Street at the Lion Street intersection, where one at Star Street will get a roundabout and one will get a raised platform on Bishopgate. I actually think that the Bishopgate one should also have a roundabout. And in terms of Star Street and Roberts Road, there's some plateaus, I think they were referred to, which are the same ones that are on Star Street and Archer Street. I think it would make sense for, sorry, it was mentioned as Watts profile, which is a whole nother one. So I think just having those roundabouts on Star Roberts and Star Archer actually matching in terms of their treatment makes a lot of sense, and it creates an intuitive transport network. And I think that's really important, and I think that would calm people when they know that things are quite predictive. And so that's really the reason why. And I feel like I'm not sure what the progress is on these particular designs. It seems like there's decisions being made. So I just feel like we need to halt that decision until we actually have some better information about why those particular treatments were picked and not consistent ones. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. So now I think we will open it up for questions, because I think now we've heard what you've had to say, it's a good opportunity to ask questions about what we heard and also potentially to the staff. So Councillor Cruiser, I think you were wanting to ask some questions. Do you want to start?
What are the safety implications of removing the rubber speed cushions at these locations by the 30th of April 2025?
Ms Adams? And noting if that has to also be a financial one, you can refer that to Mr Old.
So through the chair, I will speak about the road safety point of view, and removing it by the 30th of April doesn't allow for there to be the speed treatment mitigation measures that we mentioned in the report. So we believe there would be safety issues associated with not being able to reduce speed and mitigate it.
If we removed the rubber speed cushions at these locations by the 30th of April 2025 and then decided not to fund replacements of any kind, well, sorry, I don't think I have a question there. I'm just trying to work through the implications of this. Have we received complaints about rubber speed cushions installed elsewhere in the town?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, I don't have the data at hand, but rubber speed cushions are never popular. So I would imagine the answer would be yes, but yeah, that's just my opinion though on that, because I don't have that data at hand.
Well, love your diplomacy, Ms Adams, on that score. Anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
Yes, I apologise for all the questions, but I do want to understand before we vote. Will halting the intersection modifications listed in point 8 and 9 of the officer's response involve withdrawing our applications for state black spot funding that were made for those locations?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, depending on when council make that decision, it would not make sense for us to pursue funding if that's not council's intent to to go with the town's recommendation.
Perhaps if I can just interject, Councillor Cruiser, to make this really clear. Councillor Melrosa, with your wording in 4 to halt the intersection modifications proposed, listed in point 8 and 9, paragraph 8 does begin by speaking about what's in paragraph 7, but then paragraph 8 goes on to talk about 2 Watts profile cushions, asphalt speed humps. And were you meaning to suggest that because the beginning of paragraph 8 refers to paragraph 7, which is a main roads proposal already submitted last year for upgrading the roundabout at Roberts Road, Star Street, Howick, under the coming year's black spot program, were you meaning that that should be halted, or were you only meaning the reference in paragraph 8 to additional 2 Watts asphalt speed humps?
The 2 Watts asphalt speed bumps that I believe should be the same plateaus as the ones at Archer and Star.
Right, so to answer Councillor Cruiser's question, you're not trying to suggest by your amendment, although that's the way it appears to read at the moment, that the town should basically halt going ahead with the current proposal submitted for the Roberts Road, Star Street, Howick Street intersection. I just want to be really clear that we know what it is that we might be being asked to vote on.
The way it's written there, now that you've pointed it out, does give me the idea that that's what it says, but that's not what I'm intending for it. So
it's about the 2 Watts asphalt speed humps that are referred to as proposed on the Howick Street and I'll call it Star Street legs. So I'm assuming this is the Roberts Road intersection, which has got Star Street on one side and Howick the other.
Correct.
And the Watts asphalt speed humps are proposed to go on the Howick and the Star Street legs.
That's correct.
But you're not opposing the rest of the improvements to the existing old roundabout there.
No, it's
Right.
just the matter of the consistency around the speed bump designs.
Okay, so Councillor Cruiser, the way I read it is that the town's proposal for an upgrade to that existing roundabout would see the installation of pre-deflections on all approaches along Roberts Road and the addition of a dedicated children's crossing at that particular roundabout. But then there's the added extras of the 2 asphalt speed humps, and it's that bit of that project that Councillor Melrose is seeking to halt, as well as what's in paragraph 9. Does that help you focus on where you go next with your questions? All right, so Councillor Melrose, based upon that, I think you might need to be a bit clearer with your wording about halting the intersection modifications in paragraph 8 insofar as they relate to the whole roundabout upgrade. Maybe it would be halt the modifications proposed listed in point 8 bracket 2 Watts asphalt speed humps only. And if you'd agree with something like that, then I'd ask Ms Adams, for the project that the town's already submitted to Main Roads for the upgrade of the Roberts Road roundabout, if council resolved to take the 2 Watts asphalt speed humps out of that whole project, is it your view that that is capable of being achieved? Like we're taking a couple of aspects out but leaving all the rest that's already been submitted?
I wouldn't want to support that myself.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to find out if that's what would be the intention of it, because...
May I suggest that rather than it saying halt the intersection modifications, blah, 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 that it is modify the proposed intersection modifications to include plateaus instead of Watts profile for location 8. I think it's 8. I'm not sure how to go about it, to be honest.
You might need to start working on some wording if you want to polish up your amendment. But Ms Adams, you've heard some of that. Is there something that you can see out of that that might be able to be advised to Councillor Melrosa, given that he's now made clear what part of the proposal in paragraph 7 he has a problem with?
So through the chair, my understanding is that you're wanting consistency for all the road treatments. For one, like for a driver that's travelling along Star Street, for example, coming across both intersections, the design proposal to have the Watts profile, I do have to check on that, because the reason Watt profiles are normally suggested is because of dimensions or geometry. So it may not suit the same profile that we're proposed and we are using on Star Street and Archer, for example. So the Watts profile dimensions are different and normally chosen for a reason. So that's just something to consider, and I don't have that answer at hand.
If you need some more time to think about it, Councillor Melrosa, I suggest that you do, because I haven't put any of this yet so far, but there are people now putting their hands up with questions. I'm going to go to Councillor Miles first, then Councillor Hamer.
So now I'm confused about point 9, because point 9 says, unless I'm reading this wrong, but point 9 says a raised plateau. So is the proposal, this is a question for you, Councillor Melrosa, are you proposing not a raised plateau and something else, or have I misinterpreted? Like, yeah, what's the proposal for point 9 then, please?
Councillor Melrosa?
Point 9's proposal is a roundabout to match the Lion Street, Star Street roundabout.
The way I read Councillor Melrosa's amendment is that he's looking to halt what's set out in paragraph 9 from going ahead until the traffic management review of Carlisle is completed, not to necessarily stop it completely and not to necessarily change what's being proposed. But there is a problem with his general wording of halt what's in paragraph 8 and 9. I think it makes sense for 9 that it's clearly that he's proposing that what is there, which is actually an upgrade to an existing intersection at Bishopsgate and Lion, will become a raised plateau intersection as part of the coming Black Spot program. And there's an explanation of why with the costing. So he's saying halt that project until we've done the whole Carlisle traffic management review. But in terms of paragraph 8, it's now clear that he's not looking to halt the whole project necessarily that's in 7, just a portion of it. And Ms Adams has just said that might not actually be able to be excisable from that project because it's in there for a reason. If I haven't summarised that correctly, Ms Adams, you'll say so. Yep. So, Councillor Melrosa?
I think the word halt could just be reconsider. And then that then reads into, well, reconsider until after such time as we actually do a traffic management review that might inform such a thing.
The problem you have, Councillor Melrosa, that I can foresee already is that you're now wanting to change from stopping these proposals, which are all going to be said by the officers to be going ahead in the 25-26 budget year as part of a Black Spot program where we have to pre-submit our projects, and we already have, according to this report, pre-submitted at least one proposal that I can see, which is in paragraph 7, and then it looks like in paragraph 9 we've submitted another project already. So we submit them well in advance of the Black Spot program in the hope that our projects will be accepted for that program and then that we're ready to roll them out in the financial year in which we've applied for them. So if you're saying reconsider them now, how is reconsider them in light of until the overall traffic management review of Carlisle is done, how is that much different to halting? So I'm not sure that your desire to change the word halt to consider or reconsider is going to help us much.
Okay.
Ms Adams? Any help?
Sorry, just something else to consider, just with regards to your wording in point 4, is that we've already determined that that location that's in point 9 is high risk. So we've identified that, which is part of our submission and the reasons that we put forward to Main Roads as part of the Black Spot program. So in terms of, it might not be quite right just to say that we're waiting until the Carlisle review is complete for that particular intersection.
Okay, so what's the chances of us changing the design? Not halting, but just going to whoever it is that we submitted the request to and say, we actually want this instead of that. Is that a possibility at all?
Ms Adams?
So through the Chair, when we, as the administration, proposed design changes, that's based on safety and reducing risk. So if there was a basis and a foundation for that, that would certainly be, I think, give rise to an ability to change a design as opposed to potentially other reasons.
So following on from what you've said then, so would there be a basis safety-wise or strategic-wise or both that the Lion and Star Street roundabout make sense to do at Lion Street and Bishopgate Street based on the fact that Star and Bishopgate are both local distributors that probably have very similar traffic levels and perform a very similar function?
Ms Adams?
So through the Chair, that there's a number of different intersections and there's different data for each intersection. So if your question's related to whether or not we can change the design based on safety issues or any better design that might come up that the team can support, we can look at that. But to do it from for other reasons is challenging because Black Spot's there to purely reduce risk associated with accidents, etc.
So does a roundabout reduce risk and accidents at an intersection?
Okay, so through the Chair, roundabouts are one way of having priority control, especially on 3 or more way entries and exits. The only difference is the land requirements for that. So when you need to reduce the deflection, if like for speed to be reduced, you actually need to change the horizontal deflection as opposed to using smaller roundabouts within the existing footprint. That would require usually bigger land take on the adjacent corners. So for those reasons, sometimes we are limited in where we can easily employ roundabouts.
Have we ever done a design for that intersection for a roundabout? And is the dimensions of that intersection similar to the dimensions of, say, Lion Street and Star Street?
Ms Adams?
I don't have that information at hand. And I do know we've looked at a number of options across a number of intersections in the Carlisle area. Yep. But where we've landed, I can't comment at the moment.
I'm going to interject at this stage because I feel like we are in danger of ending up this being a complete Q&A session, and it was on the TV last night, not tonight. So there is an option for us to consider, since we have got suspension of the standing orders for speaking twice. But how do people feel about me moving a procedural motion to defer this matter to the special council meeting that I officially called today through to next Tuesday night? It will allow only this to occur, more time to pass for those who want to move an amendment to my motion to firm up their wording, get all of their questions answered by the town staff, rather than it just keep going around being a debate about what might be much bigger than originally intended. Do people have an appetite for resolving this issue this way tonight? I mean, I'm seeing nodding. Clearly, we will put it to the vote if I move a procedural motion, so you can express your disapproval if you don't like the idea. But it seems that those who are wanting to move amendments to my motion probably need more time to get the answers to their questions. And then we can hopefully come back and add it to a special council meeting that at the moment I could not see should last more than an hour and a half, and maybe it probably won't even last that long, but who knows. Are there questions about what I'm proposing? Councillor Hamer.
Just a quick question about that. Do we start where we left off in the same order? And if we made changes to our amendments, they would just be edits?
Yes,
Yep.
we'd be deferring the item, but noting the item's already been moved, it's already been seconded, it's already in debate. So we would be taking that up literally where we left off, and we have an amendment on the floor, moved and seconded, in the process of being, well, I guess you could call it a form of debate because we're still trying to get answers to questions. So, yep. All right. Well, Councillor Melrose, as the mover of this amendment that has brought us to this point, do you have anything that you want to ask about what I'm proposing, or is there anything that you feel you need to say?
Sure. Is it worth us councillors, if we decide to do this, discussing with each other each of our amendments and potentially looking at ways to either combine, drop, change, modify to, I mean, not mine obviously because it's up for, but there are other ones that are coming, and it might make sense to work on them a bit.
It is always open to elected members to talk to each other about their proposed amendments to try and see if they can find a synergy between what they're wanting to achieve.
Okay,
so
that's good.
All those who've indicated that they've got an amendment to make will continue to be considered on the calendar for when the item comes back before us. So on that basis, pursuant to clause 83A of the Meeting Procedures Local Law, I'm going to move that item 17.1 be deferred to the special council meeting to be held on 25 March 2025. Can I seek a seconder, please? Seconded, Deputy Mayor Ife, thank you. Going to formally ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 18. Questions from members without notice. Are there any questions from elected members without notice? Deputy Mayor Ife.
It is so fast. Earlier in the evening, the Mayor asked a question on behalf of some community members about charging, using the electric vehicle chargers for community members, and the answer was, we're not willing to do that right now. Is there any explanation as to why that might be the case, please?
Ms Adams, you've been in the hot seat a lot tonight. There was a chance there to hand it over to Mr Old. He was looking eager. No? Yeah, Ms Adams.
Thank you. This will be a two-part answer, so we're going to have a team with that. There are a number of reasons for and against, and definitely for is it's potentially able to assist the community with those who have electric vehicles, potentially provide a small revenue stream for the town. But similarly, we've also heard that there are concerns with doing that, and so our team has been looking at it informally, and we at this stage would not be recommending that we would do that. Allow the public to do it. Mr Old might have some further information on it.
You have to get a Guernsey tonight, Mr Old. It's your shot.
Everyone's a winner at some point. So there are, I'll try not to go too far down the rabbit hole. So if we set up these free or discounted, we do actually have to consider if there's private operators within the district. We're actually happened to be mentioned at a workshop I went to yesterday about national competition. We can't use our market force to unfairly impact on a commercial operator. And I have been through that before in a different location, that consideration. So that's just one thing. I guess there's also how do we police it if we have a private individual using it? and we need to charge a town vehicle, the logistics of all that sort of stuff. So it appears easy, but as Nat just said, could be a bit challenging. So we just have to work through that carefully. And each site maybe actually have its unique circumstances as well.
Deputy Mayor Ife?
You knew this was coming. When you said work through it, does that mean that this is a possibility in the future?
Mr. Old, everyone's a winner at some stage, aren't they? So you get the lucky last one by the looks of it.
I guess conceptually everything's possible. I mean, working through I haven't thought through it a lot, but it's, how do we get them to pay? Who polices it? That's just what's popping into my head right now. We had a brief discussion just the other day, so I don't know how much more your team may have worked on the logistics of accessing that outside of staff, entry, exit, bay, all sorts of stuff. So I didn't really give an answer, but that's where my head's at right now.
Thank you.
You've provoked me now, Deputy Mayor Ife. I have a question that maybe Ms Adams can answer. I had a conversation last year with Hawaiian Group about the possibility that they would introduce some electric vehicle charging stations into their car park for members of the public. And they said they were exploring it, might be a little bit like thinking about it that you referred to, Mr. Old. But they did make a point that the investigations that they had done to date showed that in order for customers to have a good customer experience at an electric vehicle charging station, it needed to charge pretty quickly. And in order to charge pretty quickly, it needed a lot of power load from the grid. And Hawaiian Centre's concern was that if there were a number of people out in the car park charging their EVs, and that blew the grid and put Coles supermarket into darkness and all of its fridges and freezers into meltdown, Hawaiian Group would find they had a very unhappy tenant on their hand. So their problem was, how could they manage the possibility that for the EV charging stations to be worthwhile, they would draw a huge amount of power from the grid. Is that something you understand is an issue around electric vehicle charging stations, that if people are not prepared to come and leave their vehicle, say, overnight for a slow charge, and they want a fast charge, it actually does take a lot of electricity from the grid to provide that service?
So without going into everything you said, it's all correct, but that we still have the ability to do fast charging, and the grid supports the fast charging capacity that we require. So as to the particular locations, each one does require its own study. So they may well have done that study and found it would overload the grid and decided whatever their decision has been to date on that. So yes, each location is looked at on its own. It doesn't have to necessarily have a slow trickle charge.
So noting that we've got the 3 locations that have got them here at the admin building, outside the leisure centre and / library, and then at the depot, is there an issue about private vehicles even paying to use the service, basically occupying those bays when the town's needs are a priority? Is that something that could be managed by saying these charges might be available in certain hours only when the town expects it has low demand for the facility, and that could make it available? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I would expect that if that was something the town was able to consider, it would be on hours that it wasn't being used by town vehicles.
Any other questions from members without notice? No. Item 19, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. We have none. Item 20, public question time, which will open at 9:51, but noting there remain no members in the public gallery, I'll close it at 9:51 p.m. Item 21 is public statement time, which I again open at 9:51 and close at 9:51, there being no members of the public in the gallery. Item 22, meeting closed to the public. We have no matters for which the meeting needs to be closed to the public. And at 9:52 p.m, we are concluded. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions tonight. Thank you, those who stayed with us on live streaming. We're adjourned. Note that one of our items from tonight has now been adjourned to a special council meeting that will be held here at the Town of Victoria Park next Tuesday night, the 25th of March at 6 p.m, to consider in order item 17.1 of this agenda and also the development application for the Perth Hockey Stadium high performance upgrade and also Lathlane Park redevelopment zone 1 options. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Well, thank you.